Chapter 1 The Golden Horse in the Moonlit Stable. The moon hung low over Sultan Zufard's palace like a silver coin in black velvet. In the shadows, a young man named Aram crouched in silence, his heart pounding. For 25 years, he had lived as a thief in the dusty streets below. Tonight, he would attempt the impossible, stealing the legendary golden horse. The creature's coat shimmered like molten gold even in darkness. They said it could run faster than the desert wind, that it was bound by ancient magic to serve only the true sultan. Zufard kept it in a marble stable, guarded day and night. But Aram had studied the guard rotations for 3 months. He knew that at midnight there would be exactly 7 minutes when only 2 men watched instead of 6. 7 minutes. That was all the time he had. The lock clicked open under his practiced fingers. Inside, the golden horse stood in a stall twice the size of the others, watching him with intelligent eyes that seemed to look into his soul. "Easy," Aram whispered. "I'm here to set you free." The moment his fingers touched the halter, warmth flooded through him. Images flashed through his mind. A great palace in flames, a woman's scream, a baby crying, whispered words. "Keep him safe. Hide him. One day he will return." Aram staggered backward. What was that? A vision? But it couldn't be his memory. A shout from outside shattered the moment. The guards had discovered the unlocked door. Aram grabbed the halter and swung onto the horse's back. "Run!" The creature exploded into motion. They burst through the stable door in a shower of splintered wood. Guards rushed forward, but the golden horse moved faster than any earthly steed, its hooves barely touching the ground. The palace walls loomed ahead, 20 feet of solid stone. Aram's heart seized as they raced toward certain collision, but the horse didn't slow. At the last moment, it leaped impossibly high, soaring over the walls. They landed in the street beyond and ran. Through winding alleys, past shocked merchants, with the thunder of pursuit behind them. The golden horse seemed to know where it was going, anticipating dangers before they appeared. They reached the city gates just as the massive doors were swinging closed. The horse put on a final burst of speed and shot through with inches to spare. They were free, racing into the endless desert under the watching moon. Aram had stolen the Sultan's greatest treasure and made an enemy of the most powerful man in the East. Behind them, Sultan Zufard was surely screaming with rage. But Aram didn't know yet that he had done much more than steal a horse. He had awakened something that had been waiting 25 years for the true heir to finally claim what was rightfully his. Chapter 2 The Chase Across the Sands. For hours they rode, the horse never tiring. As dawn painted the sky gold and rose, they reached a rocky outcropping with a small spring. The horse finally stopped to drink. Aram slid from its back, legs shaky. Only now, in the growing light, did he truly see what he had stolen. The golden horse stood against the rising sun, its coat glowing with inner fire. It was magnificent, but more than that, it was alive with a presence that commanded awe. "Thank you," Aram said quietly, "for saving my life." The horse regarded him with those knowing eyes, and again Aram felt impressions at the edge of his consciousness. A sense of waiting, a sense of purpose. This was only the beginning. He rested in the shade, but sleep brought strange dreams. He saw the palace again, walked through halls of marble and gold. A man in blue robes sat on a jade throne, wearing a crown of white gold and sapphires. "My son," the man said, his voice warm with love. The dream shifted. Now the palace burned. The man lay dead, his robes stained crimson. A woman clutched a baby to her chest, whispering urgently, "Take him. Hide him where Zufard can never find him. Tell him who he is. Tell him his father loved him." Aram woke with his hand on his left shoulder, touching the strange birthmark shaped like a crescent moon with a star above it. The midwife who raised him had always said it was a sign of good luck. But what if it was something more? It was near sunset when Aram heard them, riders approaching fast. He turned to see at least 24 horsemen in black robes, the Sultan's black guard, elite warriors who never failed a mission. The golden horse burst into that impossible speed again. But even at this pace, the black guard was gaining, spreading out to cut off escape routes. The horse raced up a massive dune. At the crest, Aram saw what lay ahead, and his breath caught. The endless sands, where caravans disappeared without trace and even nomads refused to venture. The horse plunged forward without hesitation. Behind them the black guard followed after only brief hesitation. Night fell as they ran. The moon rose, turning the desert silver and shadow. Hours passed in a blur of movement and starlight. Then everything changed. A sandstorm rose ahead like a wall of darkness, roaring like 1,000 lions. The golden horse raced straight toward it. "No!" Aram shouted, but the horse ignored him. They plunged into the storm and found themselves in eerie calm. The sand swirled around them like a tunnel, held back by invisible force. They were in a cocoon of safety in the heart of chaos, protected by ancient magic. When the storm finally passed, the landscape had transformed. The dunes had shifted, creating entirely new terrain. There was no trace of the black guard. The desert had erased them. The horse walked into a shallow valley that hadn't existed before. At its center stood an impossible oasis, palm trees, clear water, and a simple dwelling. Beside a small fire sat an old man who looked as if he had been waiting 1,000 years. "Welcome, Aram," the old man said. "I have been waiting for you for a very long time." Chapter 3. The Secret of the Crescent Scar. Aram dismounted, too shocked to respond. How did this man know his name? The old man smiled. "Come, sit, rest. I will tell you a story about a prince who was lost, and a throne that was stolen, and a destiny that cannot be denied. My name is Rashid. I was royal vizier to Sultan Khalid the Just." Over mint tea, Rashid asked to see Aram's shoulder. When Aram revealed the birthmark, the old man's breath caught. "It is true," Rashid whispered. "After all these years, you live." "What is true?" Aram demanded. "What is this mark?" "That mark is the seal of the House of Ashara, the royal family that ruled this land for 300 years. It appears on every true-born heir at birth. Only those of pure royal blood carry it." The world tilted around Aram. "No, I'm nobody, an orphan, a thief. You are the son of Sultan Khalid the Just and Sultana Yasmin," Rashid said gently, "and I will tell you everything." The old vizier's tale unfolded like a nightmare. 25 years ago, Sultan Khalid ruled with justice and wisdom. His wife Yasmin was renowned for her beauty and kindness. When she became pregnant, the kingdom rejoiced. An heir was coming. But Khalid's cousin Zufard had been next in line for the throne. The pregnancy enraged him. For years he plotted, positioning his followers throughout the government and military. When Aram was 6 months old during the harvest festival, Zufard struck. His men infiltrated the palace guard and began systematically murdering anyone loyal to Khalid. The palace halls ran red with blood. Khalid fought like a lion, killing 12 assassins before they overwhelmed him. He died defending the throne room door, behind which Yasmin and the baby were hidden. Yasmin knew she would die, but she could save her son. She gave the infant to a trusted servant named Mariam through a secret passage, with instructions to hide him and raise him as a commoner until he was old enough to reclaim his throne. Then Yasmin returned to her chambers, dressed in her finest robes, and told Zufard's men the baby was dead. She showed them a bundle of blankets weighted with pillows. In the chaos, they believed her. She looked Zufard in the eye and prophesied that one day justice would return, and his stolen reign would end in blood and ashes. Then he had her executed. "Mariam," Aram whispered, "the woman who raised me. She told me she found me on her doorstep." "She lied to protect you," Rashid said. "She honored the Sultana's dying wish. She kept you safe." Tears blurred Aram's vision. "And you? How did you survive?" "I was at the festival when the attack began. I fought, was wounded, left for dead. When I woke, the coup was complete. I fled into the desert, hunted by assassins. I've lived here ever since, praying that somehow the infant prince had survived." Aram stood abruptly, pacing. "This is too much. I can't be a prince. I don't know how to rule." "Then learn," Rashid said. "I will teach you everything: statecraft, strategy, warfare. And your experiences on the streets have already taught you the most important lesson: how the common people live and what they need." Aram looked at the old man, at the fire, at the golden horse. Slowly, something began to grow in his chest. Not just anger, not just grief, but purpose. For 25 years, he had felt that burning need for justice without understanding why. Now he knew. It was in his blood. "Teach me," Aram said, and his voice carried command. "Teach me everything. I have a throne to reclaim and a tyrant to overthrow." That night, Aram dreamed of his parents clearly for the first time. Khalid lifting him, making him laugh. Yasmin singing lullabies, whispering, "You are loved, my little prince." When he woke at dawn, Aram was no longer just a thief. He was Prince Aram Aish Sharif, last of the House of Ashara, rightful sultan of the eastern lands, and he had work to do. Shir, Chapter 4. The Oath at the Broken Sword. The training was brutal. Rashid was a demanding teacher who accepted nothing less than excellence. They began before dawn and continued long after sunset. Rashid taught Aram the history of the kingdom, not Zufard's false version, but the true story going back 1,000 years. Aram learned about the tribes, the merchants, the farmers. He studied maps until he could draw them from memory, learned which regions were loyal to Zufard and which only pretended out of fear. But knowledge alone wasn't enough. Rashid also trained Aram's body. Every morning they sparred with wooden swords. Aram collected more bruises in those first weeks than in years on the streets, but gradually he improved. "You're agile and quick," Rashid said, "but street brawling is different from real combat. If you're to lead an army, you need to understand warfare." They practiced with different weapons: swords, spears, daggers, bows. Aram was best with the bow, his thief's precision translating well to archery. The golden horse participated too. Each day Aram rode for hours, learning to fight from horseback, to shoot while galloping, to control the great beast with just his knees and voice. Evenings were for strategy. Rashid posed scenarios: a city under siege, a rebellion, a drought, and demanded solutions. At first Aram's answers were simplistic, but as weeks passed, he learned to think more deeply, to balance competing needs. "A ruler's decisions affect thousands," Rashid reminded him. "Every choice helps some and hurts others. The key is serving the greater good, even when it's difficult." One evening, a month into training, Rashid led Aram to a hidden cave. Inside was a sealed chest. "Your father asked me to hide this on the day of your birth," Rashid said. "If anything happened to him, I was to keep it safe for you." Inside were treasures beyond price: armor of scaled silver mail, royal robes embroidered with the crescent moon and star, scrolls of ancestral wisdom. And at the bottom, wrapped in pristine silk, was a broken sword. Your father's blade, Rashid said quietly. Moon's edge, forged 300 years ago. Zufard shattered it with a cursed weapon during the coup. Even broken, the sword hummed with power and history. Aram lifted the pieces reverently. Can it be reforged? He asked. Perhaps, but it would require a master smith who understands both metalwork and magic. Finding one would be a quest in itself. That night, unable to sleep, Aram sat by the pool under the stars, holding the broken sword. The golden horse stood beside him. I don't know if I can do this, Aram whispered. I'm not a hero. I'm just a thief who got lucky. The horse breathed softly on his face, and Aram felt warmth and encouragement. You are more than you know. You will become what you need to be. Aram looked up at the stars his parents must have gazed upon. He lifted the broken sword and spoke an oath aloud. I swear by this blade, by the blood in my veins, by the memory of those who died to protect me, that I will reclaim what was stolen. I will become the sultan my father wanted me to be. I will defeat Zufard and restore justice to this kingdom. This I swear, though it cost me everything. The words hung in the air, settling on him like a mantle. He had made a commitment that could not be taken back. Rashid stepped from the shadows. Well spoken, Your Highness. Tomorrow your training intensifies. You must learn how to inspire followers, how to build an army from nothing. You'll start with your old friends, the people who knew you as a thief. They will be your first followers. Over the next 3 months, the preparation continued. Rashid taught diplomacy, economics, law, everything Aram would need to rule justly. Then Rashid revealed something new. Your father didn't just hide material items, he also left allies. People sworn to support the true heir if he returned. They're scattered throughout the kingdom, living ordinary lives, waiting. When you're ready, I can send word. They'll come to your aid. How many? Dozens, perhaps hundreds. Nobles, military officers, merchants who remember better days. They've been waiting 25 years. The night before Aram was to leave, Rashid performed a ceremony. He anointed Aram with water mixed with desert salt. By the old ways, I recognize you as Aram Aish Sharif, Prince of the Eastern Lands, rightful heir to the throne. May you walk in wisdom, fight with courage, and rule with justice. Where will you go first? Rashid asked. Back to the city, to find my old companions. I'll tell them the truth. Some will join me. Then I begin gathering an army, one person at a time if necessary. You'll become a target the moment Zufard learns you're gathering supporters. Then I'd better be careful, Aram said with a smile. I've spent 25 years surviving on the streets. I know how to stay hidden. They embraced. Bring justice back to this land, Rashid said. Make your father's dream real. That's all I ask. Aram mounted the golden horse and looked back at the oasis one final time. This place had been his chrysalis. Now it was time to fly. Ready? He asked the horse. It pawed the ground eagerly. Aram took a deep breath and turned north toward the city, toward his destiny. Behind him, Rashid watched until horse and rider vanished. Then he wrote coded messages preparing his network for the storm that was coming. The prince had returned. The war for the eastern lands had begun. Chapter 5. Friends from Shadows and Palaces. The journey back took 5 days. Aram traveled slowly, stopping in villages along the way. What he found troubled him deeply. The first village was called Kalahari. Aram remembered it as poor but not desperate. Now half the houses stood empty, roofs caved in. The people who remained were gaunt, hollow-eyed with hunger. An old woman drawing water saw the golden horse and gasped. "Are you one of the Sultan's men?" "No," Aram said firmly. "I'm someone who wants to help. What happened here?" The woman looked around nervously, then spoke bitterly. 5 years ago, Zufard's tax collectors demanded twice what we'd paid before. We couldn't pay. They took everything: grain, livestock, even our cooking pots. Then burned 3 houses as a warning. That's monstrous, Aram breathed. That's Zufard, she spat. The next year they took people. My grandson was dragged off to the Sultan's mines. I haven't seen him in 3 years. She looked at Aram directly. You say you want to help? Then kill the Sultan. That's the only help we need. Aram felt her words like a blow. This was what Zufard had done to the kingdom, and this was just one village. I can't kill him alone, Aram said quietly. But change is coming. The true heir lives, and he's gathering strength. When the time comes, will your village stand with him? The old woman touched the golden horse. The legends say this creature only serves the true sultan. If you ride it freely, then perhaps you are who you claim. When I make my claim, I hope you'll remember this conversation. Over the next days, Aram stopped in 3 more villages. The story was the same everywhere: crushing taxes, arbitrary punishment, people disappearing. The kingdom was being bled dry, but he also found hope, buried deep but still alive. When he spoke of change, people listened. They were afraid to hope openly, but in their eyes he saw hunger for something better. On the 5th day, the great city of Madinat al-Nur appeared on the horizon, the city of light. From a distance it was magnificent, but Aram knew the truth behind that beautiful facade. The lower city was a warren of poverty, and in the palace Zufard sat on a stolen throne, growing fat on his people's suffering. Aram waited until after sunset to approach the eastern wall. The smuggler's gate was his target. He knew how to bribe his way through, but before he reached it, a voice spoke from the darkness. Either I'm seeing a ghost, or Aram the fox has risen from the dead. Aram spun. A tall, thin figure stepped forward, Ginny, his old partner in crime. Ginny, you're alive. More than can be said for you, supposedly. Word is you died in the desert. I mourned you, drank a whole bottle to your memory. I survived, and I've come back. With the golden horse, I'm guessing? Ginny's eyes glinted. That thing's worth a fortune. It's not for sale, and I'm not here for our old life. Things have changed. I've changed. Ginny studied him. Yeah, I can see that. What happened out there? I found out who I really am, and I need your help. Not for a theft, for something bigger. I don't like the sound of this. It's dangerous, but necessary. Come with me. Let me tell you something, and then you can decide if you're in or out. You're being very mysterious, Fox. Do you trust me? Ginny snorted, but he was already moving toward the gate, picking the lock with silent efficiency. Come on, then. If we're doing something stupid and dangerous, might as well get started. They slipped through and made their way to a safe house Ginny maintained above a spice merchant's shop. Once inside with the door barred, Ginny crossed his arms. All right, Fox, we're alone. What's this about? Aram took a deep breath. What I'm about to tell you will sound insane, but hear me out, all the way through. And so Aram told him everything. The visions, Rashid, the truth about his parentage, Sultan Khalid and Sultana Yasmin, the coup. He pulled aside his shirt to show the crescent moon and star birthmark. Ginny stared at it for a long time. Then he looked up, searching Aram's face. Finally, he let out a shaky breath. You're serious. You actually believe this. I know it's true. The horse wouldn't serve me otherwise. Ginny, I'm the son of Sultan Khalid. I'm going to take back my throne from Zufard. Ginny sat down heavily. This is insane. You're talking about starting a war. Zufard has the entire army, the Black Guard, everything. You have a horse and a birthmark. I have more than that. I have the truth. I have justice on my side, And I have friends, I hope. Ginny, help me find our old crew. Layla, Khalid, Samir. Do you know where they are? Ginny's expression shifted. Some of them. Layla works as a healer in the lower city. Khalid went back to the army. Samir travels around telling stories, singing songs that are a little too critical of the Sultan. Can you gather them? It'll take a few days. But yeah, I can, though they might not believe you either. Then I'll prove it. I have my father's armor, his robes, his broken blade. Ginny was quiet, then stood and extended his hand. I must be out of my mind, but I've always wanted to be part of something bigger. Count me in. I'll gather the others. Aram clasped his friend's hand, relief flooding through him. His first follower, his first believer. Every revolution started with just a few willing to take a risk. Over the next 3 days, Ginny worked his contacts. A meeting was arranged at an abandoned warehouse, a place with multiple exits they'd used before for planning heists. On the night of the meeting, Aram arrived early with the golden horse and the chest. Ginny was already there. Everyone's coming, Ginny reported, though Khalid was suspicious. He thinks it might be a trap. I don't blame him for being cautious. Within the hour, 3 more figures slipped in through different entrances. First came Layla, with dark hair in a practical braid and clever hands. When she saw Aram, her eyes went wide. It really is you. We thought you were dead. She wrapped him in a fierce hug. You idiot! Stealing the Sultan's horse? What were you thinking? I wasn't thinking clearly, Aram admitted. I didn't know what I was getting into. Next arrived Khalid, a man in his 50s, solid and unchanging. He'd been a soldier before turning to crime, had taught them all how to fight. He studied Aram with hard, suspicious eyes. Ginny says you have proof of an extraordinary claim. I hope you do, boy. I have proof. Just wait a little longer. Finally, Samir arrived, the youngest at 20, with a gift for words and music. When he saw the golden horse, his jaw dropped. Is that actually the Sultan's golden horse? It is. You absolute madman. That's the greatest theft in history. It's also potentially the stupidest, Khalid said dryly. We're all standing with stolen property that could get us executed. Actually, Aram said, this horse isn't stolen. Zufard stole it 25 years ago when he murdered the royal family. I'm taking back what belongs to me. 4 pairs of eyes stared at him in disbelief. And so, for the second time, Aram told his story. He showed them the mark, the broken sword, the armor and robes. He spoke with quiet conviction, not trying to convince through passion but through honest facts. When he finished, silence stretched on. Then Samir started laughing. This is perfect. The lost prince returns to claim his throne. It's beautiful. It's exactly the story the people need to hear. It's insane, Khalid said flatly. Even if it's true, overthrowing Zufard would require an army, resources, time. You have none of those. I have the beginning, Aram countered. I have the truth. I have the golden horse as proof of legitimacy. I have allies waiting throughout the kingdom, and I have you, if you'll stand with me. Why us? Layla asked. We're thieves and outcasts. You can help me reach the people, Aram said. Layla, you work with the poor and desperate. You know their suffering. Samir, your songs reach every corner of the kingdom. You can spread word of my return, inspire hope. Khalid, you're in the army. You know the military structure, know which officers might be sympathetic. And Ginny knows everyone and everything in this city. He looked at each in turn. I'm not asking you to fight for a prince you never knew. I'm asking you to help me make the kingdom better for people like us, the ones who've been stepped on and ignored. This isn't about restoring a dynasty, it's about restoring justice. Khalid examined the broken sword closely. This is the real thing. I saw Sultan Khalid carry this 30 years ago. I'd recognize it anywhere." He looked up with new respect. "Your story checks out, but Zufard has been consolidating power for 25 years. Even if you are the rightful heir, claiming your throne will be nearly impossible." "Nearly impossible," Aram repeated, "but not completely. That's all I need, a chance. Will you help me take it?" Khalid extended his hand. "I've served tyrants and fools most of my life. I'd like to serve a just ruler before I die. If you're willing to do this properly, to build a real challenge rather than rush off to get yourself killed, then yes, I'll help you." Layla spoke next. "I see people dying every day from hunger and neglect. If there's even a chance of changing that, I have to take it." "I'm in." Samir bounced with excitement. "This is the greatest story I've ever been part of. I'll compose an epic about you. The Prince of Ash and Gold. It'll be sung everywhere." All eyes turned to Ginny. He stood with arms crossed, expression unreadable. "You're all crazy," he said finally. "This plan has maybe one chance in 1,000. We're probably all going to die." He paused, then grinned. "But I've always preferred long odds. I'm in." Aram felt something shift. He was no longer alone. He had allies who would stand beside him against impossible odds. "Thank you," he said, voice thick with emotion. "I know the risks you're taking. I won't forget this." "Pretty words," Khalid said. "Now let's talk strategy." They talked long into the night. By dawn, they had a plan. It would take months to implement, but it was solid. Aram would travel the kingdom, contacting Rashid's hidden loyalists. Ginny would spread rumors carefully, hints about the old dynasty, questions about Zufard's legitimacy. Samir would compose songs about the old sultan, getting people to remember better times. Layla would work with the poor, showing kindness and mentioning that change might be coming. Khalid would identify sympathetic officers in the military. As they prepared to leave separately, Samir pulled Aram aside. "I need to know something. What drives you? Vengeance, ambition, or something else?" Aram thought carefully. "Justice. I saw what Zufard has done. People are suffering, starving, living in fear. My father built something good, and Zufard destroyed it. I want to rebuild it, not for myself, but for those who deserve better." Samir smiled. "That's a good answer, a true answer. That's what makes real heroes." He paused. "There's one more thing. On your journey, seek out the Bedouin tribes in the deep desert. They remember your father's rule, and they have warriors, the finest in the lands. Travel south beyond the flaming dunes. Look for Sheikh Tariq al-Sahra. If you can convince him of your identity, he might pledge his warriors. And his daughter is as fierce as she is beautiful. You seem to know a lot about the Bedouins. I spent a year with them. They're good people, honorable. They'd make powerful allies." As the sun rose over the city of light, 5 friends parted ways, each on their own dangerous mission. They had committed themselves to an impossible cause, a prince with no army, no treasury, no power except the truth of his blood and the strength of his conviction. But sometimes, that's all a revolution needs: a truth, a conviction, and a few brave souls willing to risk everything. Chapter 6. The City of 1,000 Lights and the Prophecy. Aram spent 2 weeks hidden in the city, using Ginny's safe houses to stay ahead of patrols. During this time, he learned more about life under Zufard's rule. The lower districts were near starvation. Zufard had commandeered grain stores for his armies. Merchants were crushed by arbitrary taxes. Even nobles grew restless as Zufard played them against each other. "The whole kingdom is a powder keg," Ginny explained. "Everyone's angry, but fear keeps them quiet. Fear of the Black Guard, fear of Zufard's sorcerers." "Then we give them something stronger than fear," Aram said. "We give them hope. Hope is dangerous, Ginny warned. If word spreads too soon, people might rise up before we're ready. Then Zufard will crush them. I know. That's why we must be careful. On the 15th night, Aram was moving between safe houses through the temple quarter when he heard singing. A woman's voice, clear and haunting, rising from a small temple. He shouldn't have stopped, but something about that voice called to him. He slipped into the courtyard and found an ancient priestess singing with her eyes closed. When the song ended, she opened her eyes and looked directly at him. So, the Prince of Ash and Gold has finally come. I have been waiting a very long time to meet you. Aram's hand went to his knife. How do you know who I am? I am Grandmother Yassira, keeper of this temple for 70 years. I read the bones and stars. 3 weeks ago, the stars told me the rightful heir had returned. She gestured beside her. Sit, I have something to tell you. Every instinct said to leave, but curiosity made him stay. He sat, keeping his hood up. A prophecy, she said, given to your father on the night of your birth. The old high priest received it in a vision. I was there. I heard the words. She closed her eyes and spoke in a voice that seemed to come from somewhere ancient. From ashes and gold shall the rightful prince rise, marked by the moon and the star in the skies. He shall walk among shadows and live as the low, but destiny calls, and to destiny go. 3 trials he'll face ere the throne is reclaimed. The trial of the heart, where his love shall be named. The trial of the sword, where his courage is tested. The trial of the crown, where his wisdom's invested. 4 allies shall join him, from palace and street, and an army of thousands shall bow at his feet. But beware the betrayer who wears a kind face, for treachery lurks in the throne's holy place. When the golden horse bows and the broken blades whole, when the people rise up with one voice and one soul, then shall justice return to the eastern lands, and the Prince of Ash and Gold shall rule with fair hands. The words hung heavy in the air. Aram felt them settle into his bones. That's about me? Every word, Grandmother Yassira confirmed. Your father laughed, said the priests were being dramatic, but your mother believed. When the coup came, the prophecy gave her hope that you would survive and return. But prophecies aren't real, Aram protested. They're just words, aren't they? The old woman smiled. Let us examine. It says you'd be marked by moon and star. You bear that mark. It says you'd walk among shadows and live as the low. You spent 25 years as a thief. It says the golden horse would choose you, and here you are. How much has already come true? Aram had no answer. The question is what you'll do with this knowledge. You have 3 trials ahead. The trial of the heart will test your ability to love, to form bonds that sustain you. You cannot rule alone. You'll need a partner who shares your vision. The trial of the sword will test your courage and commitment. You'll face a moment when you must choose between safety and duty, between your life and those you've sworn to protect. The trial of the crown is hardest. It will test your wisdom, your judgment. You'll decide between justice and mercy, revenge and forgiveness. That choice will define your reign. The prophecy warns of a betrayer, Aram said. How do I guard against that? You can't. Trust is a risk. Leadership requires trusting others, giving them power they could use against you. The betrayer could be anyone, friend, advisor, even someone you love. All you can do is be aware and prepared. That's not comforting. She laughed dryly. Prophecies rarely are, but they also speak of your triumph. You will face hardships, but achieve great things. She pulled out a small, wrapped object. Your father gave this to the high priest on your birthday, asking him to keep it safe. When the priest was killed, I took it and hid it. Now it returns to you. She unwrapped a ring, simple white gold set with a blue sapphire that seemed to glow with inner fire. Your father's signet ring. It bears the seal of House Ashara. Any document stamped with this carries the Sultan's full authority. More importantly, the old loyalists will recognize it. When you contact them, show this ring, and they'll know you're who you claim to be. Aram took the ring with trembling hands. It was heavy with history and responsibility. He slipped it onto his finger. It fit perfectly, as if it had always belonged there. Thank you. This means more than you know. Use it wisely. Remember the prophecy, but don't let it constrain you. Prophecies show possible futures, not inevitable ones. You still have choices, Prince Aram. You still have free will. Aram left the temple as dawn broke, clutching his father's ring. The prophecy echoed in his mind, inspiring and terrifying. 3 trials, 4 allies, a betrayer, an army, a throne to reclaim, and a kingdom to heal. It seemed impossible, but everything about his life lately had seemed impossible. And yet he survived, thrived, began building something real. He returned to find Ginny waiting, looking worried. "Where were you? You were supposed to be back hours ago." "I met someone who knew my father." Aram held up the ring. "She gave me this." Ginny's eyes widened. "Is that—" "My father's signet ring, proof even the most skeptical loyalist must accept." Ginny studied him. "Aram, how do you fight destiny? How do you live up to expectations set before you were born?" "One day at a time," Aram said. "One choice at a time. I can't control prophecies or fate. I can only control my actions. So let's focus on that. What's our next move?" Khalid sent word. He's identified 3 officers who might be sympathetic. He wants a meeting, but it's risky. It's a risk we must take. We need military support. Set up the meeting, but take precautions. Multiple escape routes. Weapons hidden nearby. Someone watching to raise alarm if things go wrong. Already planned. Over the next week, preparations were made. Khalid arranged for 3 officers to meet outside the city walls, under pretense of a private gambling game. Aram would reveal himself, show the ring and other proofs, and try to win their loyalty. It was dangerous. Any officer could betray them, but without taking risks, they could never build the force they needed. The night arrived. Aram dressed in his father's armor for the first time, scaled mail fitting perfectly, as if made for him. Over it he wore a simple cloak. He brought the broken sword, the signet ring, and most importantly, his own conviction. Ginny, Layla, and Samir accompanied him, taking positions around the meeting site, an abandoned caravanserai. Khalid was already there with 3 officers. The officers were all in their 40s or 50s, career soldiers with scars and hard but not cruel eyes. Khalid made introductions. Captain Tariq, cavalry commander. Captain Mahmoud, infantry. Captain Rashid, who oversees the western garrison. Not to be confused with Rashid the vizier, the captain said with a slight smile. Though I served under him many years ago, he was a good man. I was sorry when he died in the coup. He didn't die, Aram said quietly. He escaped and has been hiding for 25 years, waiting. The captains exchanged glances. That's quite a claim, Captain Tariq said carefully. Aram threw back his cloak, revealing the armor beneath. In the firelight, the scaled mail gleamed silver, the crescent moon and star clearly visible. My name is Aram Aish Sharif. I am the son of Sultan Khalid the Just and Sultana Yasmin. I am the rightful heir to the throne, and I have returned to take back what was stolen. The silence was absolute. The captains stared, faces showing shock, disbelief, and perhaps hope. Prove it, Captain Mahmoud said finally. Anyone can put on armor. Aram showed the crescent moon and star mark on his shoulder. He unwrapped the broken sword and laid it on the table. Finally, he held up his father's signet ring, letting firelight catch the sapphire. I bear the royal mark. I carry Moon's edge, passed down through 10 generations, and I wear Sultan Khalid's signet ring. The captains examined each piece carefully. Captain Rashid picked up the sword. I was there. I was a young lieutenant 25 years ago. I saw Sultan Khalid carry this. I watched him fight with it the night of the coup. I saw Zufard's cursed blade shatter it. This is real. The ring is authentic, Captain Tariq confirmed. I've seen royal documents with this seal. Captain Mahmud pulled out a small pendant. This belonged to one of Sultan Khalid's sisters. She said if the royal line returned, this would recognize them. It's supposed to respond to the mark. He held the pendant near Aram's shoulder. Immediately, both pendant and mark began glowing with soft blue light, pulsing in rhythm. The 3 captains dropped to their knees. "Your Highness," Captain Rashid said, voice thick with emotion, "we have waited so long. We have served a tyrant and hated ourselves for it. But now there is hope. Command us." "Rise," Aram said, feeling the weight of their loyalty. "I'm not your sultan yet. I'm just a young man with a dangerous mission. But if you're willing to join me, to risk everything, then I welcome you as allies and friends." The captains stood, eyes showing commitment and determination. "What do you need from us?" Captain Tariq asked. "Information first. I need to know military dispositions throughout the kingdom. Which units are loyal to Zufard, which might be swayed, which are neutral. I need to know about the Black Guard, numbers, training, commanders, everything about the Sultan's defenses and weaknesses." "That will take time," Captain Mahmud said, "but we can do it. Between us, we have contacts throughout the military. Second, identify other sympathetic officers. Carefully, quietly. Build a network so when the time comes, we'll have support inside Zufard's army. Dangerous, but necessary," Captain Rashid said. "We'll be careful. Third, prepare your own units, not for immediate action but for future possibility. Train them well. Keep morale up. Make sure they're ready when the call comes." "Consider it done," Captain Tariq said. They talked for another hour about logistics, strategy, timelines. By the meeting's end, Aram had a clearer picture of what he faced and what resources he could draw upon. As the captains prepared to leave, Captain Rashid pulled Aram aside. "There's something you should know. Zufard has been having dreams, bad dreams. His advisors say he wakes screaming about a golden horse and a young man marked by the moon. He's become paranoid, executing people on the slightest suspicion." "Good," Aram said grimly. "Let him be afraid. Fear will make him sloppy, cruel, and that will turn more people against him." "Perhaps, but it also makes him more dangerous. A cornered animal is unpredictable. Be careful, Your Highness." As Aram and his companions returned to the city, he thought about the prophecy, the 3 trials, the long road ahead. He had gained powerful allies tonight, begun building his rebellion's foundation, but the warning about a betrayer haunted him. One of these people he was learning to trust might one day turn against him. It was chilling, but Aram pushed it aside. He couldn't live in fear of betrayal. He had to trust, had to build alliances, had to take risks. That was the price of leadership, and he was beginning to understand that being a leader meant accepting that price, no matter how high. Chapter 7. The Trial in the Valley of Forgotten Shadows. 2 weeks after the meeting with the officers, Khalid brought disturbing news. "There's a place we need to discuss, the Valley of Forgotten Shadows, 3 days' ride south. Legend says it's cursed. Travelers who enter see visions of their worst fears, and many go mad." "Why tell me this?" Aram asked. "Because one of Rashid's hidden loyalists lives beyond it, a nobleman named Lord Hassan who commands a private force of 200 men. If we could gain his support, it would double our military strength. But the only way to reach him is through that valley." Aram remembered the prophecy, the trial of the sword, where his courage would be tested. Perhaps this was it. "Then I'll go through the valley," he said. "Not alone," Layla insisted. "We go together." "No," Aram said firmly. "I won't risk all of you. If the valley is as dangerous as the legends say, we can't afford to lose our entire leadership. I'll take the golden horse. If anyone can protect me from dark magic, it's that creature." His friends argued, but Aram was resolute. Finally, they reluctantly agreed. Ginny gave him supplies and a map. Khalid taught him meditation techniques to resist mental attacks. Layla prepared medicines for if he was injured. Samir simply said, "Come back. Your story isn't finished yet." 3 days later, Aram stood at the entrance to the Valley of Forgotten Shadows. It was aptly named, a deep gorge between black cliffs where sunlight seemed reluctant to penetrate. Mist clung to the ground, and the air felt thick, oppressive. The golden horse stopped at the entrance, ears laid back. For the first time, the creature seemed hesitant. "I know," Aram said softly, "but we have to go through. Are you with me?" The horse snorted, then stepped forward into the mist. Almost immediately, the world changed. The mist grew thicker, taking on shapes and substance. Aram heard whispers in languages he didn't recognize. Shadows moved at the edges of his vision. Then the visions began. He saw Mariam, the midwife who raised him, lying dead in a gutter, starved and abandoned. "You left me," her corpse whispered. "You abandoned me to pursue this foolish quest." "No," Aram said, gripping the reins tighter. "You died 5 years ago of illness. I was with you. This isn't real." The vision dissolved, but another took its place. His friends, Ginny, Layla, Khalid, Samir, hanging from gallows, their faces accusing. "You led us to this," they said in unison. "Your pride killed us all." "Not real," Aram repeated, but his heart was pounding. These were his fears given form, that his quest would destroy everyone who trusted him. The visions continued. He saw himself on a throne, but his face was twisted with cruelty, his hands stained with blood. He had become Zufard, just another tyrant. He saw the kingdom burning, destroyed by the civil war he had started. Each vision struck at his deepest insecurities. Was he worthy? Was his cause just, or just another grab for power? Would he destroy everything in his attempt to save it? The golden horse pushed forward steadily, and Aram focused on its warmth, its solidity. Real. The horse was real. His purpose was real. These visions were just shadows, fears given temporary form. Then came the worst vision of all. He saw his parents. Sultan Khalid and Sultana Yasmin stood before him, looking disappointed, sad. "We didn't sacrifice everything so you could start another war," Khalid said. "We wanted peace, justice through wisdom and law, not through violence." "You're destroying our legacy," Yasmin added. "All the good we built, you'll tear down in your quest for revenge." Aram felt tears on his cheeks. This struck deeper than the others because it touched on his greatest uncertainty. Was he honoring his parents' memory or betraying it? But then he remembered something Rashid had taught him. His father had fought when he had to. He had killed 12 men defending his throne and family. Sometimes justice required more than words and laws. Sometimes it required the sword. "You're not my parents," Aram said aloud. "My parents would understand that sometimes we have to fight for what's right. They would understand that I'm not starting a war. I'm finishing one that Zufard started 25 years ago." The vision wavered. His parents' faces grew uncertain, less solid. You're my fears talking, Aram continued. My doubt. But doubt is natural. It keeps me honest, keeps me from becoming the tyrant I oppose. I accept my fear. I accept that I might fail, that I might make mistakes, but I won't let that fear stop me from trying. The vision shattered like glass. The mist began to thin. Aram urged the golden horse forward, and suddenly they emerged from the valley into brilliant sunlight. Behind them, the mist swirled in the gorge like a living thing, but it did not follow. The horse nickered softly, and Aram leaned forward to pat its neck. Thank you for getting me through that. They had passed through the valley of forgotten shadows. Aram had faced his fears and doubts and emerged intact. The trial of the sword, or at least part of it, was complete. Ahead, just as Khalid's map had indicated, was a fortified estate. Guards on the walls had already spotted him and the golden horse. As Aram approached, the gates opened, and a dignified man in his 60s emerged, flanked by armed retainers. I am Lord Hassan, the man said, and unless my eyes deceive me, that is the legendary golden horse. No one has successfully crossed the Valley of Shadows in 20 years. Either you are extraordinarily lucky, or you are someone very special indeed. Aram dismounted and bowed. I am Aram Aish Sharif, son of Sultan Khalid. I have come seeking allies in the cause of justice. Lord Hassan studied him carefully. Show me your proof. Aram showed the mark, the ring, the broken sword. He told his story, not all of it, but enough. Lord Hassan listened in silence, occasionally asking sharp questions that showed a keen intelligence. Finally, the old lord nodded. I served your father as a young man. I owed him everything. He gave my family lands and titles when we had nothing. When Zufard staged his coup, I wanted to fight, but Rashid convinced me I could serve better by staying alive, waiting for this day. He knelt before Aram. I pledge myself and my men to your cause, your highness. 200 trained soldiers, well-equipped and loyal. They are yours to command. Aram felt a surge of emotion. 200 soldiers. It was a small force compared to Zufard's armies, but it was a real military unit, not just a hope or a promise. Rise, Lord Hassan. Your loyalty honors me, but I must be honest. The road ahead is long and dangerous. Zufard will not fall easily. I know, Hassan said, but some things are worth dying for. Justice is one of them. Aram spent 2 days at Hassan's estate, meeting with the soldiers, beginning to learn how to lead troops rather than just a small group of friends. Hassan was an excellent teacher, having commanded men for 40 years. Leadership in battle is different from other kinds of leadership, Hassan explained. Men need to see you, hear you, feel your confidence. They'll follow you into hell if they believe you know what you're doing, even if you don't. On the 3rd day, a messenger arrived from the city. It was one of Jinni's couriers, and the message was urgent. Zufard knows he's sending the Black Guard to sweep the countryside for you. Get to safety. The war is starting sooner than we planned. Aram's stomach tightened. So it began. Not on his schedule, but on Zufard's. What will you do? Hassan asked. I can't hide anymore, Aram said. If Zufard is hunting me openly, then I need to stop being a secret. It's time to reveal myself to the kingdom, to let the people know the true heir has returned. It's risky, but staying hidden is now more dangerous. Then you'll need protection, Hassan said. Take 50 of my men as your personal guard. The others will remain here, preparing for when you call them to war. Thank you, my lord. Your support means everything. As Aram prepared to leave, Hassan gave him one more piece of advice. You've passed through the Valley of Shadows, which means you've faced your fears. But remember, courage isn't the absence of fear. It's acting despite fear. You'll face many more tests, many more moments of doubt. The key is to keep moving forward. Aram rode out with his 50-man escort, the Golden Horse at the head of the column. For the first time, he looked like what he was claiming to be, a prince with an army, not just a thief with a stolen horse. The trial of the sword had tested his courage, his ability to face fear and doubt. He had passed, but Aram knew it was only the first of 3 trials. 2 more awaited, the trial of the heart and the trial of the crown, and somewhere ahead a betrayer waited with a kind face. But for now, Aram rode toward the next stage of his journey, toward the deep desert and the Bedouin tribes, toward allies he had yet to meet and a love he had yet to find. The prophecy was unfolding, one step at a time, and Prince Aram-ish-Sharif was becoming the leader his kingdom needed, whether he felt ready or not. Chapter 8. The Song of Rebellion. While Aram journeyed south, Samir the storyteller was waging his own war, a war of words and music that was proving surprisingly effective. In the great marketplace of Madinat al-Nur, Samir stood on an overturned crate, his ode in hand, surrounded by a crowd of common folk. The Sultan's guards watched from a distance but didn't interfere. Not yet. After all, Samir was just a singer, and his songs weren't directly treasonous. They were simply suggestive. His fingers danced across the strings, and his voice rose clear and strong. In days of old, when sultans were just, when rulers earned the people's trust, the markets thrived, the children played, no mother wept, no soldier strayed. The crescent moon shone bright and clear. The star above knew neither fear, for justice walked the palace halls, and wisdom echoed from its walls. But shadows came on a harvest night, and wrong sat down where once was right. The true crown vanished from our sight, while false gold gleamed in morning light. Yet hope remains, the old songs say, that justice will return one day, when ash and gold shall rise again, and righteousness shall break the chain. The crowd listened in rapt silence. Everyone understood the message hidden in the verses. The days of old meant Sultan Khalid's reign. The harvest night was the coup. Ash and gold was Aram's prophesied title. When the song ended, coins clinked into Samir's cup, more than usual. An old man approached, tears on his weathered cheeks. "I remember those days," he whispered. "I remember Sultan Khalid. He was a good man. Is the song true? Could the heir really have survived?" Samir lowered his voice. "Songs carry truth that speeches cannot. Listen to the whispers, grandfather. Change is coming." The old man pressed a silver coin into Samir's hand, far more than the performance warranted. "Then may the old gods speed its arrival." This scene repeated itself across the city over the following weeks. Samir performed in marketplaces, taverns, even outside the palace gates. His songs never directly mentioned Aram or explicitly called for rebellion, but everyone understood their meaning. Other singers began copying his ballads, spreading them to other cities. The songs became an underground sensation, passed from person to person, sung in whispers behind closed doors. Zufard's censors tried to stop it, but you can't arrest everyone who hums a melody. The more they tried to suppress the songs, the more popular they became. Samir became a folk hero, the voice of dissent in a kingdom that had been silent too long. But fame came with danger. One night, as Samir packed up his Audi after a performance in the lower city, 3 men in civilian clothes approached. But Samir recognized them, blackguard, trying to blend in. "The Sultan wants to speak with you," the leader said, "about your musical selections." Samir's heart raced, but he kept his voice light. "I'm honored the Sultan takes interest in humble folk music, but I'm afraid I have another engagement tonight." This wasn't a request. The men moved to surround him. Samir calculated his chances of escape, poor to none. But before they could grab him, a voice called out from the shadows. "There you are, brother. Mother's been looking everywhere for you." Layla emerged from a side alley with 4 large men behind her, dock workers she'd been treating for various injuries, men who owed her favors. The black guard hesitated, 4 against 3, and they were trying to operate quietly without drawing attention. A brawl in the street would defeat the purpose. "Your brother will have to visit the Sultan another time," the leader said coldly. "But tell him we'll be back. His songs are becoming problematic." They melted into the crowd. Samir let out a shaky breath. "Thank you," he said to Layla. "I owe you my life." "You're getting too bold," Layla said. "The songs are working too well. Zufard knows you're stirring up dissent. You need to be more careful." "I can't be careful and effective," Samir countered. "The people need to hear these songs. They need to remember there was a better time, that they don't have to accept tyranny forever." "The people need you alive," Layla said firmly. "Dead poets can't inspire anyone. Come on, we need to get you off the streets for a while." They made their way to one of Ginny's safe houses. The master thief was waiting there with news. "It's working," Ginny said. "Your songs, I mean. I have informants all over the city and the mood is changing. People are talking openly about the old sultan, questioning Zufard's legitimacy. 5 years ago, that would have been unthinkable. Now it's almost common. But Zufard's getting desperate," Layla added. "His tax collectors are getting more brutal. His executions are increasing. He's trying to crush dissent through fear, which only makes people angrier," Samir said. "Fear works for a while, but eventually it becomes fuel for revolution. Every unjust execution creates 10 more rebels." Ginny nodded. "Still, we need to be smart. The Black Guard is actively hunting for anyone connected to the resistance. We can't all end up in Zufard's dungeons before Aram is ready to move." "Speaking of Aram," Layla said, "any word?" "He's in the south," Ginny reported. "Made it through the Valley of Shadows, which is impressive, and recruited Lord Hassan's forces. He's heading toward the Bedouin territories now, trying to gain tribal support." "How long before he's ready to make his move?" Samir asked. "Months, maybe. He needs more allies, more soldiers. Right now he has maybe 300 fighters total. Zufard has 10,000 in the regular army plus the Black Guard. The numbers aren't there yet." "Then we keep doing what we're doing," Layla said. "I'll keep working with the poor, building goodwill and support. Samir, you keep singing your songs, but more carefully. Ginny, you keep gathering intelligence and maintaining our networks. And we all pray Aram can pull off a miracle." Over the next month, the underground resistance grew. Samir's songs spread to every corner of the kingdom. Layla's healing work made her beloved in the lower city. When she whispered that change was coming, people listened. Ginny's network of thieves, smugglers, and informants became the eyes and ears of the rebellion. But Zufard was not idle. He increased patrols, offered rewards for information about rebels, and made examples of anyone caught speaking against him. The pressure was building on both sides. Then came the night everything changed. Samir was performing in a tavern, a new song about a golden horse that carried hope across the desert. The crowd was singing along, their voices rising in a chorus that could be heard blocks away. The tavern door burst open. Not 3 black guards this time, but 20. Led by a captain Samir recognized, one of Zufard's most brutal enforcers. "Samir the storyteller," the captain announced. "You are under arrest for sedition, for spreading lies about our great sultan, and for inciting rebellion." The crowd surged to their feet, but they were unarmed civilians against trained warriors. Several people tried to block the guards and were cut down without mercy. "No!" Samir shouted. "Stop! I'll come quietly. Just don't hurt them." "Too late for that," the captain sneered. "You wanted to inspire rebellion? Congratulations. These people die because of you." He raised his sword to strike down an old woman who had dared to shout at him. Samir moved without thinking, diving forward with his oud, smashing it into the captain's arm. The sword went wide. For a moment, everyone froze. Samir, a skinny poet, had just attacked a captain of the Black Guard. The captain's face went purple with rage. "Take him and burn this tavern. Kill anyone who resists." The guards moved forward, but the crowd, seeing their beloved singer about to be dragged away, seeing their neighbors and friends murdered, finally snapped. The fury that had been building for 25 years of oppression suddenly found its outlet. They attacked with whatever was at hand: chairs, bottles, fists. They had no training, no weapons, no chance. But they had rage and numbers. In the chaos, Layla appeared with her dock workers. "Get him out!" she shouted at Ginny, who had materialized from somewhere with a smoke bomb. Ginny threw the bomb. Thick smoke filled the tavern. In the confusion, hands grabbed Samir and dragged him toward a back exit he hadn't known existed. They ran through the night, the sounds of fighting echoing behind them. Samir looked back once and saw flames rising. The Black Guard was making good on their threat to burn the tavern. "Those people," Samir gasped. "We left them." "Saving you was all we could do," Ginny said grimly. "If you'd stayed, you'd be dead or captured, and they'd have died anyway. At least this way, your voice can still sing for them." They reached a safe house on the outskirts of the city. Only when they were inside with the doors barred did Samir break down, sobbing for the people who had died protecting him, for the tavern keeper who had welcomed him, for the old woman the captain had tried to kill. Layla held him as he wept. "This is what we're fighting against," she said softly. "This is why Aram must succeed, so no more innocent people die for daring to hope for something better. We have to accelerate our plans," Ginny said. "Tonight changes everything. Word will spread about what happened. People will be even angrier, but also more afraid. We need Aram to act soon, or the moment will pass." "I'll send word south," Layla said. "Let him know it's time. The kingdom is ready to rise. We just need him to light the spark." Samir wiped his eyes and stood. His oud was gone, smashed in the fight. His voice was hoarse from smoke and crying, but his spirit was not broken. "The song isn't finished," he said quietly. "They can burn taverns and kill innocents, but they can't kill the song. It's in people's hearts now, and hearts are harder to silence than voices." He was right. Over the next few days, news of the tavern massacre spread throughout the city. But instead of cowering in fear, people grew bolder. Graffiti appeared on walls, the crescent moon and star symbol, accompanied by the words, "The Prince returns." Zufard's brutal response had backfired. The fire that killed innocent people had lit a different kind of fire, the fire of righteous fury that would soon consume a tyrant's stolen throne. The song of rebellion was no longer a whisper, it was becoming a roar. Chapter 9. Love Found Among the Bedouins. 3 weeks after leaving Lord Hassan's estate, Aram and his 50-man escort reached the edge of the deep desert. Here the sand dunes rose like mountains, shifting and changing with every wind. This was the territory of the Bedouin tribes, proud, fierce people who had never bent knee to any sultan, who lived by their own laws and followed their own customs. Finding them would not be easy. The Bedouins moved constantly, following water and pasture for their herds. But Aram had the golden horse, and the creature seemed to know where to go, leading them unerringly south. On the 5th day in the deep desert, they saw riders approaching. A dozen mounted warriors on swift horses, their faces wrapped in cloth against the sand, their rifles slung across their backs. "Weapons down," Aram commanded his men. "We're here as friends, not invaders." The Bedouin riders circled them warily. Their leader, a tall man with piercing eyes visible above his face wrap, rode forward. "Who are you to enter our lands with armed men?" he demanded. "Are you bandits? Tax collectors for the false sultan? Speak quickly, or you'll find graves in the sand." "I am Aram Aish Sharif," Aram said, pulling back his hood, "son of Sultan Khalid the Just. I come seeking Sheikh Tariq al-Sahra to ask his counsel and, if I prove worthy, his alliance." The Bedouins exchanged glances. The leader studied Aram for a long moment. "Bold words. Can you prove them?" Aram showed his mark, his ring, told his story. The Bedouins listened in silence. Finally, the leader nodded. "I am Nasir, captain of Sheikh Tariq's personal guard. The golden horse is known to us. My grandfather told stories of it. If it accepts you as rider, that speaks in your favor. Come, the sheikh will want to meet you himself." They rode for hours deeper into the desert until they crested a dune and saw below a vast Bedouin encampment, hundreds of black tents, thousands of people, herds of camels and horses. "Our people number 15,000, Nasir said with pride. "We can field 3,000 warriors. Sheikh Tariq is the most powerful of the desert chiefs. Other tribes follow his lead." Aram's heart raced. 3,000 warriors. If he could gain their support, he would have a real army. They descended into the camp. People stopped to stare at the golden horse, murmuring in wonder. Children ran alongside, laughing and pointing. At the center of the camp stood a tent larger than the others, its entrance flanked by guards. Sheikh Tariq emerged, a man in his 60s with a long gray beard, sharp eyes, and the bearing of one who had commanded men his entire life. He wore simple robes but carried himself with natural authority. "So," he said, studying Aram, "the lost prince returns. My grandfather served Sultan Khalid. He told me stories of those days, of justice, prosperity, peace. Then came the night of blood and fire. We mourned from afar. Will you help me reclaim what was stolen?" Aram asked directly. Sheikh Tariq smiled slightly. "You have courage, speaking so boldly. But the Bedouin do not pledge their swords lightly. You must prove yourself worthy. Tomorrow at dawn, you will face 3 tests of our people. Pass them, and we will discuss alliance. Fail, and you leave with nothing but your life." "I accept," Aram said without hesitation. That night, Aram was given a guest tent. As he prepared for sleep, he heard a commotion outside. Raised voices, then silence. Curious, he emerged to find a young woman arguing with the guards. She was perhaps 25, dressed in practical desert clothing with a sword at her hip and a rifle across her back. Her eyes flashed with intelligence and fire, her movements graceful and confident. She was, without question, the most striking woman Aram had ever seen. "I don't care what my father said," she was telling the guards. "I will see this prince who claims our allegiance." "It's all right," Aram said. "Let her through." The woman turned those fierce eyes on him, studying him from head to toe with an appraising gaze that made him feel oddly vulnerable. "So you're the lost prince," she said. "You don't look like much. Thin, young, soft hands from city living. Can you even fight?" "I'm learning," Aram said, stung by her assessment. "And who are you to judge?" "I am Zainab al-Sahra, daughter of Sheikh Tariq. I command 200 warriors in my father's army, the best riders and shots we have. If you expect Bedouin warriors to follow you, you'll need to prove you're worthy of respect. Your father is already testing me tomorrow." "Yes, and I intend to be one of the tests." She smiled dangerously. "Sleep well, Prince. You'll need your strength." She left as abruptly as she'd arrived, leaving Aram staring after her in confusion and something else, a flutter in his chest he hadn't felt before. Dawn came too quickly. The entire camp gathered to watch the tests. Sheikh Tariq explained the rules. First test, horsemanship. You will race against our finest rider, my daughter Zainab, through the obstacle course we've prepared. Second test, marksmanship. You will shoot targets from horseback at full gallop. Third test, single combat against a champion of my choosing. These tests prove skill, courage, and honor. Are you ready? "I am," Aram said, though his stomach churned with nerves. Zainab appeared mounted on a magnificent black mare, wearing a fierce grin. "Try to keep up, city prince." The race began. Zainab took an early lead, her mare flying across the sand. But the golden horse was no ordinary mount. It responded to Aram's slightest touch, weaving through obstacles, jumping over barriers. Slowly, they gained on Zainab. For the first time, Aram saw surprise flash across her face. She urged her mare faster, but the golden horse matched her pace. They raced neck and neck, sand spraying, the crowd roaring. At the final stretch, the golden horse surged ahead, crossing the finish a horse length before Zainab. Aram reined to a stop, breathing hard. Zainab rode up beside him, and now there was respect in her eyes alongside the surprise. "No one has ever beaten me," she said. "That horse is legendary indeed. Or perhaps," she studied him more carefully, "perhaps the rider is more skilled than he appears." The second test was harder. Shooting from horseback required perfect timing and steady hands. Aram hit 6 of 10 targets, not impressive by Bedouin standards, but respectable for a city dweller who'd only been training for months. "You need work," Zainab commented, "but you're teachable. That's more important than natural talent." The third test was single combat. Sheikh Tariq's champion was a massive warrior named Rashad, scarred and battle-tested. The combat would be with blunted swords, first blood or surrender. They circled each other. Rashad attacked first, powerful blows that drove Aram backward. The crowd murmured. Their prince was being dominated. But Aram remembered Rashid's training. Use your agility. Don't try to match strength with strength. He dodged instead of blocking, letting Rashad's power work against him. When the big warrior overextended, Aram struck, a quick slash that drew a line of red across Rashad's arm. First blood. The crowd erupted in cheers. Rashad bowed respectfully. "You fight smart, not just strong. That is the mark of a true warrior." Sheikh Tariq stood. "You have passed all 3 tests. You have proven worthy of Bedouin respect. Now we will talk of alliance." That evening, in the Sheikh's tent, they negotiated terms. Sheikh Tariq would pledge 3,000 warriors to Aram's cause, but not immediately. "You must prove yourself further," the Sheikh explained. "Win a real battle. Show that you can lead men in combat, not just pass tests. Do this, and the full strength of the Bedouin tribes will stand with you." "I understand," Aram said, "and I thank you for this chance." "There is one more thing," Sheikh Tariq said. "My daughter Zainab wishes to join your campaign personally, leading her 200 riders. She has always been headstrong, and I see wisdom in having someone I trust close to you to report back on your progress." Aram's heart jumped. "I would be honored to have her." Over the following days, as preparations were made, Aram and Zainab spent time together, training, talking, learning about each other. She taught him desert survival skills and improved his horsemanship. He told her about the city, about his years as a thief, about his dreams for a just kingdom. "You speak well of justice," Zainab said one evening as they sat by a fire. "But can you deliver it? Many rulers promise much and deliver little." "I don't know," Aram admitted. "I'm still learning. But I know what injustice looks like. I've lived it, seen others suffer from it. I have to believe that experience will guide me to make better choices. Honesty, Zainab said. That's rare in leaders. Most would claim certainty they don't possess. I've seen what false certainty does. Zufard is certain he deserves the throne, certain his cruelty is justified. I'd rather doubt myself and strive to improve than be certain and become a tyrant. Zainab looked at him for a long moment, the firelight dancing in her eyes. You may actually be worthy of that crown, Aram Aish Sharif. It was the first time she'd used his title without mockery. Something passed between them in that moment, a connection, an understanding, perhaps the beginning of something deeper. The trial of the heart, the prophecy had said, where his love shall be named. On the night before they were to depart, Zainab found Aram standing apart from the camp, looking up at the stars. Nervous about the campaign ahead? She asked. Always, he admitted. Every decision I make affects so many lives. What if I'm wrong? What if I lead people to their deaths for nothing? Then you'll grieve, learn, and try to do better next time, Zainab said. Leadership isn't about being perfect. It's about caring enough to try and being honest enough to admit your mistakes. She stood beside him, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. My father once told me that the best leaders are those who fear their own power, who understand its capacity for harm. Those who crave power carelessly are the ones who misuse it. You're very wise, Aram said softly. I'm a warrior's daughter who spent her life watching men lead, for good or ill. You learn from observation. She paused, then added more quietly, and I've been observing you, Aram. What I see, it gives me hope. He turned to look at her, found her already looking at him. In the starlight, she was breathtaking, strong, fierce, intelligent, beautiful, in a way that had nothing to do with softness and everything to do with strength. Zainab, he said, I don't know what the future holds. I don't know if I'll survive the battles ahead, if I'll ever sit on my father's throne. But I know that meeting you has changed something in me. You make me want to be worthy, not just of the crown, but of standing beside someone as remarkable as you. She smiled, a gentle smile very different from her usual fierce grins. That's the most romantic thing anyone's ever said to me, though admittedly, Bedouin warriors aren't known for poetry. Is it too forward? Aram asked, suddenly uncertain. I don't want to presume. She kissed him, cutting off his words. It was brief, soft, but it sent electricity through his entire body. When she pulled back, her eyes were dancing with amusement. Was that too forward? Not at all, Aram managed. Good, because I don't have time for endless courtship rituals. We're going to war, and life is uncertain. If I feel something, I act on it. I feel something for you, Aram, something that grows stronger each day. I feel it too, he said, like I've been searching for something my whole life without knowing it, and suddenly here you are. The prophecy, Zainab said thoughtfully. Samir told me about it when he visited our camp last year. The trial of the heart, where your love shall be named. Perhaps this is that trial, choosing to open your heart despite all the dangers ahead, despite the certainty that love makes you vulnerable. Then it's a trial I'm happy to face, Aram said, taking her hand. They stood together under the stars, two warriors on the eve of a great campaign, allowing themselves this moment of peace and connection before the storm ahead. The trial of the heart was not about finding love. It was about accepting it, embracing it, allowing yourself to care deeply for another person even when that care could become a weakness, a vulnerability. It was about being brave enough to love in a world of uncertainty. And in that moment, holding Zainab's hand beneath the desert stars, Aram passed that trial without even realizing it. Chapter 10. The Treasure Beneath the Flaming Dunes. Aram departed Sheikh Tariq's camp with Zainab and her 200 riders. Before they could march on Zufard, he needed more resources: weapons, armor, gold to pay soldiers and buy supplies. Lord Hassan's forces were well equipped but small. The Bedouins brought numbers but would need provisions. Rashid had mentioned something during Aram's training, a legend about a hidden treasury buried by Sultan Khalid's grandfather in case of emergency. The location was marked on the second half of the map Aram had received in the Valley of Shadows. "The Flaming Dunes," Zainab said, studying the map. "Aptly named. The sand there is red like fire, and the heat is so intense that men have died from exposure in hours. But my people know secret routes, hidden oases. We can guide you there." They traveled west for 10 days, into regions so desolate that even the hardy Bedouins grew quiet. The sand here was indeed red, almost crimson in the sunset, and the heat was brutal. Finally, using both the map and Zainab's knowledge of the desert, they found the entrance, a narrow cleft in a rock formation that looked like natural erosion but was actually carefully crafted to appear that way. "I'll go in first," Aram said. "If there are traps—" "Then we go together," Zainab interrupted. "You're not dying before we've even started this war." They descended into the cleft with torches, leaving the others above to stand guard. The passage led downward into cool darkness, a relief after the scorching surface. Ancient stairs carved from living rock spiraled down into the earth. At the bottom they found a massive chamber, and there, preserved by the dry air and darkness, was a treasure that took Aram's breath away. Weapons, thousands of them. Swords, spears, bows, arrows, all carefully stored and still in perfect condition. Armor for cavalry and infantry. And beyond the weapons, chests of gold coins, each one stamped with the seal of House Ashara. "By the stars," Zainab breathed. "There's enough here to equip an army of 5,000. "My grandfather built this," Aram said, awed. "He must have seen the possibility of disaster, prepared for his heirs to have resources if they ever needed to reclaim the throne. But there was more. In the center of the chamber stood a shrine, and on that shrine lay a sword, whole, gleaming, magnificent. Next to it was a note in faded ink. Aram picked up the note with trembling hands and read aloud, "To my grandson's grandson, whoever you may be, whenever you may find this. If you are reading this, dark times have come, and the throne has been lost. This sword is Morning Star, twin to Moon's Edge. It was forged at the same time, by the same master smith, for my twin sons. One sword was passed down through the ruling line. The other I saved here, knowing that someday it might be needed. May it serve you as faithfully as its brother served those who came before. Reclaim our kingdom, restore our honor, rule with justice. Sultan Farid, the Wise." Aram lifted the sword. It was perfectly balanced, its blade engraved with the crescent moon and star. When he held it, he felt warmth flow through him. Not the strange magic of the golden horse, but something simpler. Connection to his ancestors, to the long line of sultans who had wielded these blades in defense of justice. "Now you look like a prince," Zainab said softly. They spent 2 days transporting the treasure to the surface, making multiple trips with the warriors. It was exhausting work, but worth it. When they were done, Aram's small army had everything it needed to grow. "We should send word to Lord Hassan and to Khalid," Zainab suggested. "Tell them we have resources now. They can begin recruiting in earnest." Aram agreed. He sent swift riders north with messages. "Come. Bring any who would fight for justice. We have the means to equip them now. While they waited for responses, Aram drilled with his Bedouin warriors. Zainab was a demanding teacher, but an excellent one. Under her tutelage, his skills with sword and bow improved rapidly. "You're a natural," she said after a particularly good training session. "You have good instincts. You just lacked training and confidence." "I have an excellent teacher," Aram replied. Their relationship deepened during these days. They were not just prince and warrior, but partners in a shared cause. They talked late into the night about their vision for the kingdom, about how to balance justice with mercy, tradition with progress. "The Bedouins have always been independent," Zainab said one night. "We don't want a sultan who will try to force us into cities, tax us into poverty, or demand we change our ways. Can you promise to respect our autonomy?" "I can," Aram said seriously. "My father did. He understood that a kingdom is strongest when it embraces diversity, when different peoples can maintain their traditions while still being part of something larger. I'll honor that wisdom." "Then you'll have the Bedouins' loyalty," Zainab said. "Not just for this war, but for your reign after." Over the next month, their forces grew. Lord Hassan arrived with his 200 soldiers, now fully equipped from the treasury. Khalid came with 300 men, soldiers who had quietly deserted Zufard's army, tired of serving a tyrant. Ginny arrived with 200 more, thieves, smugglers, and common folk from the city who wanted to fight for change. Most surprisingly, Layla arrived with 500 people. Not warriors, but craftsmen, healers, cooks, and laborers. "An army needs more than fighters," she explained. "It needs people to feed them, heal them, maintain equipment. I've brought you a support corps." Samir came too, his voice hoarse from singing, but his spirit undimmed. "I can't fight," he admitted, "but I can document this. Your story needs to be told properly." By the end of the month, Aram commanded a force of 1,500 fighters plus 500 support personnel. It was still small compared to Zufard's armies, but it was real, organized, and growing daily. They made camp in a hidden valley Zainab knew, defensible and with good water. Here, Aram held his first war council, not just issuing orders, but listening to advice from experienced warriors like Zainab, Khalid, and Lord Hassan. "We need our first victory," Khalid said. "Something visible, something that will inspire more people to join us, but we can't take on Zufard's main forces yet. We're not ready." "What about the garrison at Kala Fortress?" Zainab suggested. "It's a strategic location controlling the southern trade routes. Zufard has only 500 men there, and they're poorly motivated. They're there as punishment duty, soldiers the Sultan doesn't trust enough to keep in the capital." "If we take Kala Fortress," Lord Hassan mused, "we cut off Zufard's southern trade. That hurts him economically and strategically. Plus, it's defensible. We could hold it even if he sends a larger force against us." "It's also symbolic," Samir added. Kala Fortress was where Sultan Khalid won his first victory as a young man. If you reclaim it, the parallel will be powerful. Aram looked at his advisors, at these people who had risked everything to stand with him. "Then, Kala Fortress it is. We march in 3 days. This will be our declaration to the kingdom. The true heir has returned, and he's coming to reclaim his throne." The next 3 days were a flurry of preparation. Weapons were distributed, armor fitted, strategies planned. Aram felt the weight of responsibility. These people would follow him into battle, trust him with their lives. Some would die. That knowledge sat heavy on his heart. On the night before they marched, Zainab found him alone, staring at Morning Star. "Second thoughts?" she asked. "Just first-time nerves," Aram admitted. "I've never led men into battle before. What if I make a mistake? What if people die because of my inexperience? People will die, Zainab said bluntly. That's the nature of war. But they're dying for something they believe in, fighting against injustice. That's more honorable than dying in Zufard's pointless wars of conquest or from starvation due to his oppressive taxes. She took his hand. You don't have to be perfect, Aram. You just have to try your best and learn from your mistakes. Trust your advisors. Listen to experienced warriors. And remember why you're doing this. For justice, Aram said. For justice, Zainab echoed. Now get some sleep. Tomorrow, you become not just a prince, but a warrior prince, and I'll be right beside you. That night, Aram dreamed of his father standing on the walls of Kala Fortress, looking down at him with pride. When he woke, he felt ready. The trial of the sword awaited, not in facing his fears this time, but in proving he could lead men in battle, make hard choices, accept the cost of his ambitions. Morning came bright and clear. Aram stood before his assembled forces, wearing his father's armor, carrying Morning Star, mounted on the golden horse. Today we march to Kala Fortress, he called out, his voice carrying across the camp. Today we announce to Zufard and to all the kingdom that the days of tyranny are numbered. We fight not for conquest or glory, but for justice, for the people who suffer under an unjust ruler, for the memory of those who died defending what was right. For the future we will build together. Are you with me? The roar that answered him shook the valley, 1,500 voices shouting as one. For Prince Aram, for justice, for the true Sultan, they marched south, an army born from ashes and gold, heading toward their first battle and the beginning of a war that would decide the fate of the eastern lands. Chapter 11. The Army of Sand and Stars. The march to Kala Fortress took 5 days. Aram used the time to learn from his warriors, listening to their stories, understanding who they were and why they fought. There was Rashad, the Bedouin champion who had fought Aram in the test, now his loyal follower. I fight because the Bedouins remember freedom, he said. Zufard wants to control everyone, even those who live in the desert. We will not be controlled. There was Captain Mahmoud, one of the military officers who had sworn to Aram. I joined the army to protect people, he explained. Instead, I was forced to oppress them. I want to remember what it means to be a soldier, not an enforcer for a tyrant. There was Fatima, one of the common folk from the city. My son was taken for the Sultan's wars. He never came back. If fighting with you means other mothers don't lose their sons that way, then I'll fight. Each story strengthened Aram's resolve. These weren't just soldiers. They were people with hopes, fears, and reasons for risking everything. He couldn't let them down. On the evening of the 4th day, scouts reported that Kala Fortress lay just beyond the next ridge. Khalid and Zainab helped Aram plan the assault. The fortress sits on a rocky hill, Khalid explained, sketching in the sand. One main gate, thick walls, but not impossible to scale. The garrison has 500 men, but they're undisciplined. This is a backwater posting. We could take it by siege, Lord Hassan suggested. Surround it, cut off supplies, wait for them to surrender. That takes time, Zainab countered. Time for Zufard to send reinforcements. We need speed. A quick assault under cover of darkness. I agree, Aram said. We have the advantage of surprise. They don't know we're coming. We hit them hard and fast, give them a chance to surrender, but don't allow them time to organize a proper defense. They planned the assault carefully. Zainab's Bedouin riders would circle around to cut off retreat routes. Khalid's experienced soldiers would assault the main gate with a battering ram. Lord Hassan's men would scale the walls on the sides. Aram would lead the center assault with his personal guard. You don't have to be in the front lines, Khalid cautioned. You're too valuable to risk. I have to be there, Aram said firmly. The soldiers need to see their prince fighting alongside them, sharing their danger. If I ask them to risk their lives, I must risk mine as well. Zainab smiled approvingly. Spoken like a true warrior. They attacked 2 hours before dawn, when defenders would be sleepiest. The assault began with a volley of fire arrows, lighting up the darkness and creating confusion. Then Khalid's ram hit the gate, once, twice, 3 times before it splintered. Aram charged through on the golden horse, morning star raised high. For justice, for the kingdom, the garrison fought back, but they were unprepared and disorganized. Many threw down their weapons and surrendered rather than die for a sultan they didn't love defending a fortress they didn't care about. The battle was over in less than an hour. Aram's forces took the fortress with only minimal casualties, 15 wounded, 3 dead. The garrison had lost 23, with the rest surrendering. Aram stood on the fortress walls as the sun rose, looking out over the southern lands. They had won their first battle. The fortress was theirs. But then came the hard part, what to do with the prisoners. His advisors gathered to discuss options. Execute them, one of Khalid's officers suggested. They served Zufard. They deserve no mercy. No, Aram said sharply. We're not Zufard. We don't execute prisoners. Then what? The officer challenged. Release them? They'll just return to Zufard and tell him our strength and position. Give them a choice, Aram said slowly, working through the problem. Let them swear loyalty to me and join our cause, or let them leave. But without weapons and with word of our victory, some will join us, some will leave. Either way, we show we're different from Zufard. That's risky, Lord Hassan said, but it's also principled. It sends a message about what kind of ruler you'll be. Aram addressed the prisoners personally. I am Aram Aish Sharif, son of Sultan Khalid. I've taken this fortress not for conquest, but for justice. You've served Zufard because you had no choice. Now you have one. Join me, fight to restore justice to the kingdom, and you'll be welcomed as brothers. Or leave, return to your homes, and tell everyone what you saw here, that the true heir has returned and fights not with cruelty, but with honor. Choose. Of the 477 surviving garrison soldiers, 230 chose to join Aram's cause. The rest were given food and water and sent away. It was a risk, but Aram believed it was the right choice. You're either brilliantly merciful or foolishly naive, Zainab said after. Time will tell which. Over the next week, word of the victory spread rapidly. Samir composed a ballad about the Battle of Kala Fortress, emphasizing Aram's mercy toward prisoners. Jinni's network spread the story throughout the kingdom. The response was overwhelming. People began arriving at Kala Fortress in small groups, then larger ones. Farmers who could shoot, merchants who could fight, former soldiers seeking redemption. Within 2 weeks, Aram's army had doubled to 3,000 fighters. More importantly, nobility began declaring support. Lord Hassan was no longer alone. 3 other minor nobles openly pledged loyalty to Aram, bringing their own forces and resources. Sheikh Tariq sent word. You have won your first battle and shown yourself worthy. The Bedouin tribes pledge their full support. 3,000 warriors ride to join you. Even some of Zufard's own military commanders began sending secret messages, indicating they would defect when the time was right. But success brought new challenges. 6,000 soldiers needed feeding, housing, training. The logistics were overwhelming. Layla organized the support corps brilliantly, establishing supply lines, medical stations, and administrative systems. "This is where wars are really won," she said, "not just in battles, but in making sure the army is fed, healthy, and equipped." Khalid took charge of training, turning enthusiastic volunteers into disciplined soldiers. "They have heart," he reported, "but heart alone doesn't win battles. They need training, discipline, unity." Aram spent his days learning the art of command, not just how to win battles, but how to manage an army, keep morale high, resolve disputes, and make strategic decisions. It was exhausting, overwhelming, and nothing like his life as a thief. But Zainab was always there, offering counsel, sharing the burden. Their relationship had evolved into true partnership. She commanded respect from the troops, brought Bedouin wisdom to strategy sessions, and kept Aram grounded when the pressures threatened to overwhelm him. "You're doing well," she told him one evening. "Better than you think. You listen more than you speak, which is rare in leaders. You admit when you don't know something. You care about the individual soldiers, not just the army. These qualities will make you a great sultan." "If I survive to become sultan," Aram said. "When?" Zainab corrected. "When you become sultan. Have faith, Aram. The prophecy says." "The prophecy also mentions a betrayer," Aram reminded her. "Someone close to me will betray me. Every day I look at the people I trust and wonder, is it you? Is it Khalid? Ginny? Even you?" Zainab took his face in her hands. "If you live in fear of betrayal, you'll never truly trust anyone, and that will destroy you faster than any traitor could. Yes, someone may betray you, but you can't let that possibility prevent you from building the relationships you need. Trust, Aram. Have faith in people, even knowing they might disappoint you. That's what separates you from Zufard. He trusts no one, and that's made him paranoid and cruel." She was right, as she often was. Aram kissed her forehead. "What would I do without you?" "Fortunately, you'll never have to find out," she said with a smile. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. A week later, scouts brought urgent news. Zufard had finally responded to the loss of Kala Fortress. He was sending an army, not a small force, but a real army. 10,000 soldiers under the command of General Mazin, one of his most skilled commanders, supported by 500 Black Guard. Aram's council gathered for an emergency meeting. The mood was grim. "We can't face 10,000 with our 6,000, Khalid said bluntly. "We're not ready for a pitched battle against a professional army." "Then we don't fight a pitched battle," Zainab suggested. "We use the terrain, use guerrilla tactics, hit and run. The Bedouins excel at that kind of warfare." "But we can't hold Kala Fortress," Lord Hassan said. "Not against those numbers." "Then we abandon it," Aram said, "the decision painful but necessary. We make them chase us deeper into the south, into the desert where our Bedouin allies have every advantage. We bleed them with small attacks, stretch their supply lines, exhaust them. Then, when they're weak, we strike decisively." It was a sound strategy, but it meant giving up their hard-won fortress. Some of the newer recruits grumbled. They'd come to fight, not run. Aram addressed the entire army. "We're giving up Kala Fortress but not surrendering. We're choosing when and where to fight. Zufard thinks he can crush us with numbers. We'll teach him that numbers aren't everything. We'll show him that we fight smarter, that we know this land better, that we have what his army lacks, a just cause and unshakable faith in victory." They evacuated the fortress, taking everything of value and burning what they couldn't carry. Then they marched south into the deep desert, into territory where the Bedouins reigned supreme. Zufard's army pursued, as Aram knew they would. General Mazin was competent and determined, but he was also leading 10,000 men into hostile terrain, far from supply bases, against an enemy who knew every dune and oasis. The guerrilla campaign began. Small groups of Bedouin riders would attack supply convoys, then vanish into the desert. Archers would shoot from distant dunes, then disappear before Zufard's soldiers could respond. Wells would be poisoned or blocked, forcing the army to carry more water and slow their advance. It was frustrating, grinding warfare, not glorious battles, but constant harassment. Zufard's army grew tired. Their morale dropped. Their numbers dwindled from heat, disease, and those small, constant attacks. After 6 weeks, General Mazen had lost 2,000 men without ever seeing Aram's main force. His remaining 8,000 were exhausted, low on supplies, and deep in hostile territory. "Now," Khalid said, "now we strike the decisive blow." They chose the battlefield carefully, a narrow valley where Mazen's numbers would count for less, where cavalry could flank from hidden positions. Sheikh Tariq arrived with his 3,000 fresh warriors, bringing Aram's force to 9,000. On a scorching afternoon, Aram's army finally revealed itself, blocking the valley exit. General Mazen had no choice but to fight. The Battle of the Burning Valley, as it would be called, lasted from noon until sunset. It was brutal, bloody, and terrible. Aram fought in the front lines, Morning Star flashing in the sunlight, the golden horse carrying him through the chaos. He saved Khalid's life when the old warrior was surrounded. He rallied a broken line when it seemed about to collapse. He saw men he knew, soldiers who had shared meals with him, told him their stories, fall and not rise again. War, he learned, was not glorious. It was horror and necessity and tragedy all mixed together. But they won. Zufard's exhausted army broke before their determined assault. General Mazen himself fell in single combat with Lord Hassan. By sunset, the survivors, perhaps 3,000 of the original 10,000, were fleeing north in disarray. Aram stood among the dead and wounded as the sun set, covered in blood and dust and ash. They had won a great victory. They had destroyed a major part of Zufard's army. The path to the capital was opening, but the cost. So many dead, so much suffering. Zainab found him there, her own armor dented and blood-stained. She said nothing, just stood beside him in silence, her presence a comfort. "Is it worth it?" Aram asked quietly. "All this death, all this suffering, is justice worth this price?" "I don't know," Zainab admitted. "But I know that without this war the suffering would continue. Zufard's oppression kills people every day. Slowly, through hunger and despair. This is faster, bloodier. But perhaps it ends the suffering sooner." "I hope you're right," Aram said, "because I'll carry these deaths with me for the rest of my life." "Good," Zainab said. "A ruler should carry the weight of their decisions. It keeps you human, keeps you from becoming the monster you're fighting." That night, as they buried the dead, both their own and the enemy's, for Aram insisted on honoring all the fallen, he understood something important. This was part of the trial of the crown, the wisdom to know when violence was necessary and when it was not, the judgment to make terrible choices for the greater good, the strength to carry the weight of those choices. He had won his first major battle, but he'd lost something too. His innocence, perhaps, or his simplicity. He was becoming what he needed to be, but the transformation hurt. Samir found him after the burials, his face somber. "I've been composing a song about today, but I don't know how to make it glorious." "It wasn't glorious. It was necessary, but terrible." "Then tell the truth," Aram said. "Don't make it glorious. Tell it as it was. Necessary, terrible, the price we pay for justice. Let people know what war really costs." The army rested for a week, treating wounded and grieving dead. When they marched north again, they were changed. tempered by battle, sobered by loss, but also confident. They had faced Zufard's army and won. They could do it again. Word of the victory spread throughout the kingdom. More soldiers defected from Zufard's forces. More nobles declared support. The rebellion was becoming a revolution, and in his palace, Sultan Zufard raged and screamed and began preparing his final defense. The capital city, with its high walls and massive garrison, would be where this war was decided. The siege of Madinat al-Nur was coming. The final confrontation between the stolen throne and its rightful heir was at hand. Chapter 12. 3 days and nights at the palace walls. 6 months after stealing the golden horse, Aram stood on a ridge overlooking Madinat al-Nur, the city of light, his birthplace, the city where he'd lived as a thief, and now the city he would have to conquer to reclaim his throne. His army had grown to 12,000, soldiers, Bedouins, nobles' forces, and thousands of common people who had joined his cause. They surrounded the city on all sides, cutting off supply routes and trade. Inside those walls, Zufard waited with 20,000 soldiers, the full Black Guard, and sorcerers rumored to have dark powers. The city's defenses were formidable, walls 40 feet high, gates of reinforced steel, towers bristling with archers. "This won't be easy," Khalid said, stating the obvious. "Even with our numbers, assaulting those walls will cost thousands of lives." "Then we don't assault blindly," Aram replied. "We've spent 6 months building this army. We can spend a few weeks being smart about how we use it." They established siege lines and settled in for what would clearly be a prolonged engagement. But Aram had advantages Zufard didn't know about. Jinni's network inside the city included servants in the palace itself. Messages could be smuggled in and out. Information could be gathered. More importantly, the city's population was on Aram's side. Zufard's brutal rule had made him hated. The people were just waiting for an opportunity to rise up. "We need to coordinate with the resistance inside," Jinni suggested. "When we attack the walls, if the people revolt inside simultaneously, Zufard will be fighting on 2 fronts. "Can you organize that?" Aram asked. "Give me a week," Jinni said with confidence. While Jinni worked his networks, the siege began in earnest. Catapults hurled stones at the walls, not expecting to breach them, but maintaining pressure. Archers exchanged volleys with defenders. Small groups probed defenses, looking for weaknesses. On the 3rd night, something changed. A portion of the eastern wall exploded outward in a blast of green fire. Zufard's sorcerers had struck, killing 50 of Aram's soldiers in an instant. "So he's using magic," Zainab said grimly. "That changes things." But Aram had his own surprise. The golden horse, which had been with him throughout the campaign, suddenly reared up and neighed, a sound like thunder. Golden light pulsed from it in waves, and where that light touched Aram's army, they felt strength and courage flow into them. Where it touched the city walls, the green fire sputtered and died. "The horse protects the rightful sultan," Lord Hassan breathed in wonder. "It's shielding us from their magic." The siege settled into a pattern. By day, conventional warfare, catapults, arrows, probing attacks. By night, magical duels between Zufard's sorcerers and the golden horse's protective aura. And all the while, inside the city, Jinni's network prepared for uprising. On the 7th day, Aram received unexpected help. 3 of Zufard's military commanders opened a gate and defected with 2,000 soldiers. They had been among those secretly sympathetic to Aram, finally making their move. "The army inside is fracturing," one commander reported. "Half want to defect but fear Zufard's reprisals. The Black Guard keeps the regular soldiers in line through terror." "Then we give them courage," Aram said. He rode close to the walls on the golden horse, where everyone could see him. "Soldiers of Madinat al-Nur," his voice rang out. "I am Aram Aish Sharif, son of Sultan Khalid. I have not come to conquer you, I've come to free you. You serve a tyrant who stole his throne through murder. I offer you a choice. Join me in restoring justice, or stand aside and let this battle pass you by. I promise mercy to all who lay down their weapons. This is not a war against the army, it's a war against one man and his stolen crown." His words were carried through the city by sympathetic citizens. That night, more defections occurred. By dawn, Zufard's army inside the city had shrunk to 15,000, and morale was crumbling. But Zufard was not finished. On the 8th day, he released his final weapon, the Black Guard, 500 elite warriors enhanced by dark magic, their eyes glowing red, feeling no pain or fear. They sallied from the gates in a devastating charge that nearly broke Aram's lines. Only the intervention of Zainab and her Bedouin cavalry, striking the Black Guard's flank, prevented disaster. The battle raged for hours. The Black Guard were terrifying opponents, stronger and faster than normal men, feeling no pain. But they could still be killed, and Aram's soldiers learned quickly. Aim for the head or heart. Use teamwork. Don't fight them one-on-one. By sunset, the Black Guard was decimated. 300 dead, the rest withdrawn behind the walls. But Aram had lost 500 soldiers. The cost of victory kept mounting. That night, exhausted and grieving, Aram stood in his tent, unable to sleep. Zainab found him there. "How much more?" he asked quietly. "How many more have to die?" "I don't know," she said honestly. "But I know this. If you stop now, their deaths mean nothing. You have to see this through, for them and for all the others who'll die if Zufard remains in power." "I'm so tired," Aram admitted. "Tired of death, of making decisions that kill people, of carrying this weight." Zainab held him then, letting him lean on her strength. "You don't have to carry it alone. We're all here with you. Let us help bear the burden." On the morning of the 10th day, the uprising inside the city began. Ginny's network had done its work. Citizens took to the streets, building barricades, attacking supply depots, freeing prisoners from Zufard's dungeons. The city descended into chaos. Zufard's remaining army was split between defending the walls and putting down the internal revolt. "Now," Khalid urged, "while they're divided, this is our moment." Aram gave the order. The full army attacked all gates simultaneously. Scaling ladders went up against walls, battering rams pounded gates, and inside the city, the people fought for their freedom. The battle lasted 3 days and 3 nights. 3 days of brutal street fighting, of houses burning, of soldiers and citizens dying together. 3 days that would be remembered forever as the liberation of Madinat al-Nur. Aram fought in the front lines, Morning Star never leaving his hand, the golden horse carrying him through impossible dangers. He saved countless lives, rallied broken units, led charge after charge. On the 3rd evening, as the sun set blood-red through the smoke, Aram's forces reached the palace itself, the grand structure where he'd been born, where his parents had died, where Zufard had ruled through stolen power for 25 years. The palace gates stood open, abandoned by defenders who had finally fled or surrendered. Aram dismounted and walked through those gates on foot, Zainab on one side, Khalid on the other, his friends and loyal soldiers behind him. Inside, the palace was eerily quiet. Servants cowered in corners, unsure if they would be killed or spared. Bodies of Black Guard who had fought to the last lay in the corridors. And deep inside, in the throne room Aram remembered from his visions and dreams, Sultan Zufard waited. Chapter 13. The Final Battle in the Hall of Mirrors. The throne room was exactly as Aram remembered from his visions, vast, with columns of white marble, golden fixtures, and mirrors covering every wall. Those mirrors now reflected flames from torches, creating an illusion of infinite fire, infinite copies of everyone present. Sultan Zufard sat on the throne, not the true throne of jade that Khalid had used, but a golden monstrosity Zufard had commissioned. He wore his false crown and robes of crimson and black. At 55, he was still powerful looking, but his face showed the strain of the last months, paranoia, fear, and rage all mixed together. Around him stood the last of the Black Guard, perhaps 50 warriors, their eyes glowing with unholy red light. And beside the throne stood a figure in dark robes, face hidden, one of Zufard's sorcerers. "So," Zufard said, his voice echoing in the chamber, "the whelp finally arrives. I should have made sure you were dead 25 years ago, but I believed your mother's lie. That was my only mistake." "You made many mistakes," Aram said, walking forward slowly. Morningstar was in his hand, the golden horse behind him. "You murdered a just ruler and stole his throne. You oppressed the people for 25 years. You turned a prosperous kingdom into a realm of suffering. Those were all mistakes, Zufard, and now you'll answer for them." "Answer to whom?" Zufard laughed bitterly. "To you? A street thief playing at being a prince? I am the Sultan. I have ruled for a quarter century. This throne is mine by right of conquest, by right of strength. Your father was weak. His soft justice made the kingdom vulnerable. I made it strong. You made it feared," Aram corrected. "But fear is not strength. It's the illusion of strength, and like all illusions, it shatters when tested. Your army has crumbled. Your people have risen against you. You sit alone in this palace with only hired killers to protect you. That's not strength, Zufard. That's the end." Zufard's face twisted with rage. "Then come and take the throne, boy. But know that I won't give it up easily. Blackguard, kill him." The enhanced warriors moved as one, inhumanly fast. But they faced not just Aram but Zainab, Khalid, Lord Hassan, and 50 of Aram's best fighters who had entered with him. The battle in the Hall of Mirrors was savage and confusing. Reflections everywhere made it hard to distinguish real opponents from images. The Black Guard fought with unnatural strength and no regard for their own lives. Aram found himself separated from his companions, facing 3 Black Guards alone. They attacked in perfect coordination, their movements so fast he barely parried. One blade sliced his arm. Pain flared, but he couldn't stop to acknowledge it. The golden horse reared and kicked, catching one Black Guard in the chest and sending him flying into a mirror, which shattered. 2 left. Aram remembered his training. Use agility. Don't match strength with strength. He ducked under a slash, rolled past a thrust, came up slashing with Morningstar. The blade, twin to Moon's edge, cut through enhanced flesh and dark magic alike. One Black Guard fell. The last one pressed him hard, driving him back toward the wall. But then an arrow sprouted from the warrior's eye, Zainab shooting from across the room even in this chaos. "I said you weren't doing this alone," she shouted. Across the room, Khalid and Lord Hassan fought back to back, their combined experience devastating even against enhanced foes. Aram's soldiers, inspired by their prince's courage, fought with extraordinary determination. One by one, the Black Guard fell. Finally, only Zufard remained on his throne, and the robed sorcerer beside him. "You've lost," Aram said, breathing hard, bleeding from a dozen minor wounds. "Surrender. I'll grant you mercy, exile, not execution. It doesn't have to end in more death." For a moment, something flickered in Zufard's eyes. Uncertainty, perhaps even fear. He was beaten, and he knew it. But then the sorcerer beside him threw back his hood, and Aram's breath caught in shock. It was Captain Rashid, one of the 3 officers who had pledged loyalty to Aram months ago, who had fought beside him, advised him, helped build his army, the betrayer, the one the prophecy had warned about. "I'm sorry, Your Highness," Rashid said, and he actually sounded regretful. "Truly I am. You're a good man and you would have been a just sultan, but Zufard pays better, and he promised me a dukedom if I betrayed you." He raised his hands and dark energy crackled between them. "I've been feeding him information all along. Your plans, your numbers, your strategies. Why do you think the Black Guard knew exactly where to strike? Why do you think Zufard was always 1 step ahead?" "Rashid," Aram said, trying to keep the hurt from his voice, "you don't have to do this. Whatever he promised you, I can offer more. Not gold or titles, but the chance to be part of something good. It's not too late to choose the right side." "The right side is the winning side," Rashid replied, "and Zufard still has 1 card to play. Me." He unleashed his magic, and the entire throne room exploded in dark fire. Aram's soldiers screamed, some falling, others barely protecting themselves. The golden horse reared, its golden light pushing back the darkness, but even it struggled against such powerful sorcery. "I've been studying that horse," Rashid said, "learning its magic. It protects the rightful sultan, yes, but it can be overcome with enough power, and I've spent 25 years gathering power." The battle of magic raged, golden light versus dark fire. Rashid was right. He was incredibly powerful. The golden horse was being driven back, its light dimming. Aram realized with horror that they might actually lose. After everything they'd been through, they might fall here at the final moment because of one man's betrayal. But then he remembered something Grandmother Yassira had said. The prophecy shows possible futures, not inevitable ones. You still have choices. He had a choice now. He could try to fight Rashid with the sword, but the sorcerer's magic would kill him before he got close. Or he could do something else, something unexpected. He lowered Morning Star and stepped forward, directly into the line of Rashid's magical fire. "Your Highness, no!" Zainab screamed, but Aram didn't stop. The dark fire hit him and passed through him harmlessly, because Aram wasn't relying on the golden horse's protection. He was relying on something simpler, his legitimacy. "You can't kill me with stolen magic," Aram said calmly, walking steadily toward Rashid through the flames, "because I am the rightful heir. This is my palace, my throne room, my kingdom. It recognizes me. The walls, the floor, the very air, they know who I am, and they reject your dark powers." It was a bluff, or maybe it was truth. Aram wasn't entirely sure, but he spoke with absolute conviction, and in that moment, the palace itself seemed to respond. The mirrors began to glow with soft blue light, the same color as the royal mark on Aram's shoulder. Rashid's magic faltered. Doubt crossed his face, and in that moment of uncertainty Zainab's arrow took him in the chest. The sorcerer fell, his magic dissipating like smoke. As he lay dying, he looked at Aram with something like regret. "I chose wrong," he whispered. "The prophecy was right. I'm sorry." Then he was gone, and only Zufard remained. The usurper sat on his false throne, suddenly looking small and old and frightened. All his power was gone. All his certainty was gone. He was just a tired man who had made terrible choices and now faced their consequences. "Kill me, then," he said, his voice hollow. "Take your throne. Be the hero everyone thinks you are." Aram walked up the steps to the throne, Morning Star in his hand. One stroke, and it would be over. Justice would be done. His parents would be avenged. The kingdom would be free. But he remembered the trial of the crown, the choice between justice and mercy, between revenge and forgiveness. the decision that would define his reign. He lowered the sword. "No," Aram said quietly. "I won't kill you, not because you deserve mercy, but because I want to be better than you. You ruled through fear and death. I'll rule through justice and law. You'll stand trial for your crimes. The people you oppressed will judge you. That's true justice, not summary execution." Zufard stared at him in disbelief. "You're a fool. If you let me live, I'll be a martyr to those who supported me. I'll be a rallying point for future rebellions. You should kill me while you have the chance." "Maybe," Aram admitted, "or maybe showing mercy even to my worst enemy will demonstrate that my kingdom will be different from yours. That's a risk I'm willing to take." He turned to Khalid. "Take him into custody. He'll await trial." As guards led Zufard away, the former sultan looked back one last time. "You really are your father's son," he said, and for the first time there was something other than hatred in his voice. He would have made the same choice. Maybe that's why the kingdom loved him. With Zufard gone, Aram stood alone before the throne. Not Zufard's golden monstrosity, but the true throne of jade that had been moved to a corner and covered with dust. His friends gathered around him. Zainab, wounded but alive. Khalid, old but unbowed. Ginny, grinning despite exhaustion. Layla, her healer's robe stained with blood from tending the wounded. Samir, already composing verses about what he'd witnessed. Lord Hassan, loyal until the end. "It's over," Zainab said softly. "You've won." "We've won," Aram corrected. "All of us together." "So what now?" Ginny asked. "You're the Sultan. What's your first royal decree?" Aram looked around at the throne room. Damaged, blood-stained, full of reminders of the battle just fought. Tomorrow, he would have to start the hard work of ruling, of rebuilding, of healing a kingdom that had suffered for 25 years. But tonight, there was one thing he needed to do. "Tomorrow we begin rebuilding," he said. "Tonight we honor the fallen, both ours and theirs. Everyone who died in this war, whether they fought for me or for Zufard, they all deserve to be remembered." "Even Rashid?" Layla asked quietly. "The traitor?" Aram thought about that. Rashid had betrayed them, had nearly cost them everything. But he had also been a human being who made a terrible choice, and in the end, he had shown regret. "Even Rashid," Aram said. "We honor all the dead. That's how we ensure we never forget the cost of this war, never become casual about violence and death. That's how I stay human, stay just, stay worthy of this throne." They spent that night not celebrating, but mourning, holding vigil for the thousands who had fallen to bring them to this moment. It wasn't the triumphant ending people might have expected, but it felt right. And as dawn broke over Madinat al-Noor, as the first light of the new day touched the palace, Aram finally allowed himself to sit on the throne of his father, the throne he had been born to inherit, lost at 6 months old, and now reclaimed at 25. The golden horse entered the throne room and, for the first time, bowed its head to Aram. The gesture was clear. It recognized him not just as the rightful heir, but as the true sultan. The trials were complete. The prophecy was fulfilled. The Prince of Ash and Gold had become the Sultan of the Eastern lands. But the real work was only beginning. Chapter 14, The Trial and the Wedding. The trial of Zufard al-Nazir took place 3 months after the liberation of Madinat al-Noor. In that time, Aram had begun the difficult work of rebuilding, restoring destroyed buildings, reuniting separated families, establishing new laws, and starting the long process of healing a traumatized nation. For the trial, Aram created a special court, not composed of nobles or officials who might have biases, but of common people from throughout the kingdom. A farmer whose family had starved due to Zufard's taxes, a merchant whose business had been destroyed by arbitrary laws, a mother whose son had been conscripted and never returned. They would judge the man who had oppressed them. Zufard was brought before them, not in chains, but walking freely, allowed to defend himself with dignity. Aram wanted this trial to demonstrate that his justice would be fair, even to his greatest enemy. The testimony lasted for days. Witnesses told of Zufard's cruelties, families destroyed, innocent people executed, wealth stolen, wars started for personal glory. The evidence was overwhelming and damning, but Aram also allowed Zufard to speak in his own defense. The former sultan surprised everyone by not denying his actions, but attempting to justify them. "I did what I believed was necessary," Zufard said. "Sultan Khalid was weak. His soft justice made the kingdom vulnerable to enemies. I made us strong, feared, respected. Yes, some people suffered, but the kingdom survived and grew powerful under my rule." "At what cost?" one of the jurors asked. "My daughter died of starvation because your taxes took our last grain. Tell me how that made the kingdom strong." Zufard had no answer to that. After 3 days of deliberation, the jury returned their verdict: guilty of murder, treason, and tyranny. The sentence under traditional law was death, but Aram surprised everyone by commuting the sentence to life imprisonment. "He will live," Aram announced, "but not in comfort. He will spend the rest of his days in a simple cell with basic food and water, forced to contemplate the suffering he caused. Death would be too easy, too quick. Let him live with the weight of his crimes." Some protested that this was too lenient. Others praised it as showing mercy even to the unmerciful. But Aram stood firm. He had made his choice, justice tempered with mercy, establishing the principle his reign would follow. Grandmother Yassira, who had attended the trial, sought Aram out afterward. "The trial of the crown," she said with satisfaction. "You passed it. You chose the harder path, neither blind vengeance nor foolish forgiveness, but measured justice. Your father would be proud." "Did you know Rashid would betray me?" Aram asked. "I knew someone would." The prophecy was clear, but not who. Would knowing have changed anything? "No," Aram admitted. "I would still have had to trust people, take risks. Knowing wouldn't have prevented the betrayal, just made me paranoid." "Exactly," the old priestess said. "That's why prophecies rarely give names or specific details. They guide, but don't dictate. You've proven yourself worthy, Prince Aram. Or should I say, Sultan Aram." With Zufard dealt with, Aram turned his attention to building his government. He restored Rashid the vizier to his rightful position. The old man wept with joy at being able to serve openly again. He appointed Khalid as commander of the military, with orders to rebuild it as a defensive force, rather than an instrument of oppression. Layla became head of the Royal Medical Corps, establishing hospitals throughout the kingdom. Jinni, surprisingly, became master of intelligence. His network of informants now served the crown, keeping Aram aware of problems before they became crises. Samir became the royal chronicler, with the task of preserving the true history of the kingdom for future generations. Lord Hassan returned to his estates, honored as a hero and friend of the Sultan. The other nobles who had supported Aram were rewarded, while those who had actively supported Zufard's worst excesses faced justice. The Bedouin tribes, including Sheikh Tariq, were granted formal autonomy, free to maintain their traditional ways while being part of the kingdom. It was a new model of governance, respecting diversity rather than demanding conformity. Through all of this, Zainab was at Aram's side, advising, supporting, challenging him when she thought he was wrong, celebrating with him when he made good decisions. Their relationship had evolved from attraction to partnership to deep, abiding love. 6 months after taking the throne, on a perfect spring day, when the kingdom was finally beginning to heal, Aram and Zainab were married in a ceremony that blended city traditions with Bedouin customs. It was held in the palace courtyard, open to any citizen who wanted to attend. Thousands came, not just nobles, but common people, former soldiers, Bedouins in their finest robes. They came to celebrate not just a wedding, but the symbol of a new kingdom being born, one that honored all its people. As Aram placed a ring on Zainab's finger, not the royal signet, but a new ring they'd chosen together, he spoke the traditional vows with additions of his own. I pledge my heart to you, my strength to you, my truth to you. Together we'll rule this kingdom with justice and compassion. Together we'll face whatever trials come. Together we'll build the future our people deserve. Zainab's vows were similarly heartfelt. I pledge my courage to you, my wisdom to you, my love to you. I'll stand beside you in times of peace and war, joy and sorrow. I'll challenge you when you're wrong and support you when you're right. Together, we'll be more than we could ever be apart. When they kissed, the crowd erupted in cheers that could be heard throughout the city. It was a moment of pure joy, something the kingdom had seen too little of for too long. That night at the wedding feast, Samir performed his complete epic, The Prince of Ash and Gold, for the first time. It told the entire story, from the night of Zufard's coup through Aram's childhood as a thief, his discovery of his true identity, the gathering of allies, the trials, the battles, and finally the reclamation of the throne. When he reached the part about Rashid's betrayal, Samir didn't hide or soften it. He told it honestly, the pain of betrayal, the near disaster it caused, but also the lesson it taught about maintaining trust despite the possibility of hurt. For what is a kingdom without trust? Samir sang. What is leadership without faith in others? The prince could have let betrayal close his heart, could have ruled through suspicion and isolation. Instead, he remained open, remained human, and in doing so, remained worthy of the throne he claimed. The hall was silent when he finished, many eyes wet with tears. Then applause thundered, and people stood, honoring not just the performance but the story itself. Their story, their kingdom's story. Aram stood and raised his cup. To all who fought beside me, to all who believed when belief was difficult, to all who suffered under tyranny and survived to see this day, this victory belongs to all of us. This kingdom belongs to all of us, and together we'll make it worthy of the sacrifices that brought us here. As the celebration continued into the night, Aram and Zainab slipped away to a quiet balcony overlooking the city. Below them, Madinat al-Nur glowed with thousands of lamps, truly the city of light once more. Do you think we can actually do this? Zainab asked softly. Rule justly? Keep our promises? Build the kingdom we've imagined? I don't know, Aram admitted. But I know we'll try. Every day we'll try to do better, to be better. And we'll surround ourselves with good people who'll tell us when we're failing. That's all any ruler can do. Try their best and stay open to correction. Then we'll do it together, Zainab said, taking his hand. Sultan and Sultana. Partners in everything. Partners in everything, Aram echoed. They stood together looking out over their kingdom, the prince and princess who had become Sultan and Sultana, ready to face whatever challenges the future might bring. The trials were over. The prophecy was fulfilled. The throne was secure. But the real work, the work of healing, building, and maintaining justice, was only beginning, and they would face it together with courage, wisdom, and love. Chapter 15. Golden dawn of a new sultanate. 1 year after reclaiming his throne, Sultan Aram Aish Sharif stood in the throne room, now restored and beautiful, the mirrors replaced, the blood washed away, the scars of battle healed, and reflected on how much had changed. The kingdom was healing. It would take years, perhaps decades, to fully recover from 25 years of Zufard's misrule. But progress was visible everywhere. The granaries were full again because taxes had been reduced to fair levels. The hospitals Layla had established were saving lives daily. The schools Aram had funded were teaching a new generation to read and think critically. The roads were safer because the military served the people rather than oppressing them. There had been challenges, of course. Some of Zufard's old supporters had attempted a rebellion in the northern provinces. It had been put down, but Aram had insisted on mercy for the rank-and-file participants, reserving punishment only for the leaders. This had earned him criticism from some who wanted harsher justice, but it had also deprived future rebels of martyrs. Trade was recovering as merchant princes from distant lands began trusting the kingdom again. The Bedouins had become invaluable partners, their knowledge of the desert opening new trade routes. Sheikh Tariq visited the capital regularly, as much a friend and advisor as an allied leader. Aram's government was an unusual mix, nobles and commoners working side by side, positions earned by merit rather than birth. It wasn't always smooth. There were arguments, conflicts, mistakes, but it was functioning, improving, growing stronger. Today was special, though. Today was the first anniversary of Aram's coronation, and he had called together everyone who had been crucial to the journey, a reunion and celebration, but also a moment to remember how far they'd come and how much work remained. They gathered in the throne room, Khalid, looking older but proud, his military reforms taking root. Layla, exhausted from running the medical system but fulfilled by the lives being saved. Ginny, his network now serving the kingdom rather than just himself, still grinning his irrepressible grin. Samir, having completed his epic and started a new work about the kingdom's rebuilding. Lord Hassan was there, along with representatives from the other noble houses who had supported Aram. Captain Tariq and Captain Mahmud, 2 of the 3 officers who had sworn loyalty early, stood in their new positions of command. The absence of Captain Rashid, the betrayer, was felt by all, a reminder that even in victory, there were losses and lessons. Sheikh Tariq had made the journey from the desert with a delegation of Bedouin elders, and beside Aram, wearing a crown that had been forged to match his, crescent moon and star wrought in silver and sapphires, sat Sultana Zainab, visibly pregnant with their first child. Rashid the vizier, ancient and wise, stood to speak first. 1 year ago, a young man who had lived as a thief sat upon this throne for the first time. Many doubted. Many wondered if someone raised in poverty could truly lead a kingdom. I am here to say that those doubts were unfounded. He gestured to Aram. Sultan Aram has proven that leadership comes not from birth or wealth, but from character. He has made mistakes, as all rulers do, but he has learned from them. He has faced difficult choices and made them with wisdom and compassion. The kingdom is better today than it was a year ago, and it will be better still a year from now. That is the measure of a true sultan. Applause filled the room. Aram stood, feeling the weight of the crown on his head, not just the physical weight, but the responsibility it represented. "Thank you, Rashid," he said, "but I must be honest with everyone here. I still feel inadequate most days. I still question my decisions. I still fear making mistakes that will harm people. I don't think that will ever change." He paused, looking around at the assembled faces. But I've learned that those fears are not weaknesses. They're safeguards. The moment I become certain I'm always right, the moment I stop questioning myself, that's when I'll become the tyrant I fought against. So I will continue to doubt, to question, to seek counsel from all of you. Because that's how we ensure this kingdom remains just. Khalid spoke next, his voice gruff with emotion. I've served 3 sultans in my life. Khalid the Just, Zufard the Tyrant, and now Aram the Wise. Of the 3, I'm proudest to serve the last. Not because he's perfect. He's not. But because he tries to be better every day, and he listens to those around him. That's all any of us can ask of our leaders. One by one, others spoke, sharing stories of the past year, of improvements they'd seen, of hope restored. The merchants spoke of fair trade practices being established. The farmers spoke of reasonable taxes and support during the recent drought. The soldiers spoke of being proud to serve again, protecting people rather than oppressing them. When Ginny spoke, his words were surprisingly serious. A year ago, I was a thief helping another thief steal a kingdom back. I thought it was just another heist, another adventure. But it became something more. It became a chance to be part of something meaningful, to build rather than just take. Aram gave me that chance, and I'll be grateful for it the rest of my life. Layla spoke of the medical reforms, tears in her eyes. We're saving lives that would have been lost under Zufard's rule. Children who would have died from preventable diseases are growing up healthy. Mothers are surviving childbirth. The sick can seek treatment without fear of bankruptcy. This is what justice looks like in practical terms. Samir, of course, turned his speech into a performance. I've been composing a new work, he announced. Not about battles and thrones, but about the harder work that comes after. The work of rebuilding, healing, forgiving. It's less dramatic than war, but more important. Because any fool can tear down. It takes wisdom to build up. He strummed his oud and sang a new verse. The sword has been sheathed, the battle is won, but the real work has only begun. To heal the wounds, to right the wrongs, to turn our grief into hopeful songs. The golden horse no longer runs to war, but stands guard at the palace door. The broken sword has been made whole, justice restored to the kingdom's soul. And so the tale that seemed to end reveals itself as just the bend. The story continues day by day as the Sultan leads the kingdom's way. When the ceremony concluded, Aram held a private gathering with his closest companions, the ones who had been there from the beginning. In a small chamber adjoining the throne room, they sat together as friends rather than sultan and subjects. There's something I need to tell you all, Aram said. Something I've been thinking about. They waited, curious and slightly concerned. I want to establish a tradition, Aram continued. Every year on this day, I want to gather with you, all of you, and have you tell me honestly what I'm doing wrong, where I'm failing, what I need to improve. No flattery, no political niceties, just honest truth. Ginny raised an eyebrow. You want us to criticize you, officially? I need you to, Aram said seriously. Power corrupts. I've seen it. Zufard probably started with good intentions, but unchecked power turned him into a monster. I won't let that happen to me. So I need you to be my check, my balance, my reminder to stay humble and just. That's either brilliant or insane, Khalid muttered. Possibly both. It's very you, Zainab said with a smile. And I think it's wise. I'll make sure it happens, even when you're tempted to skip it. That's why I married you, Aram said. You keep me honest. They spent the next hour doing exactly what Aram had requested, offering honest critiques. Khalid thought military spending was still too high. Layla wanted more resources for rural medical clinics. Ginny suggested the intelligence network needed better oversight to prevent abuses. Samir thought the arts weren't being supported enough. Aram listened to all of it, taking notes, asking questions, committing to improvements. It was uncomfortable at times. No one enjoys hearing their failures listed, but it was necessary. As the evening drew to a close, Rashid the vizier asked to speak with Aram privately. The old man looked more frail than usual, and Aram suddenly realized with a pang that Rashid wouldn't be with them much longer. "Walk with me," Rashid said. They walked through the palace gardens, now restored to their former beauty. The moon, a perfect crescent with a bright star above it, hung in the sky, mirroring the royal seal. "I don't have much time left," Rashid said without preamble. "Months, perhaps a year. Don't look sad. I've lived a full life, and I've seen what I waited 25 years to see. The rightful sultan on the throne, the kingdom healing. I can go in peace." "You've been like a father to me," Aram said quietly. "More than a teacher or advisor. You gave me purpose, identity, a mission. I don't know what I'll do without you." "You'll do what you've been doing. Rule wisely, listen to good counsel, stay humble. You have Zainab now, and soon you'll have a child. You have friends who love you and advisors who respect you. You don't need me anymore, though I'm grateful you think you do." Rashid stopped walking and turned to face Aram directly. "But I do have one final piece of advice, the most important I can give you. I'm listening. Remember that you're not just Sultan of the Eastern lands. You're also still Aram, the boy who grew up in the streets, who stole to help others, who knows what it's like to be powerless. Don't lose that part of yourself. Don't become so absorbed in being the Sultan that you forget what it was like to be a subject. That's the key to just rule. Never forgetting what your people experience. Never losing empathy for their struggles." "I'll remember," Aram promised. "I'll make sure to walk among the people regularly, to hear their concerns directly, to see the kingdom through their eyes." "Good," Rashid said. "Then my work is complete. You're ready. The kingdom is in good hands." They embraced, and Aram felt tears on his cheeks. This man had given him so much, had kept his secrets for 25 years, had trained him, had risked everything to help him reclaim his throne. "Thank you," Aram whispered, "for everything, for believing in me when I didn't believe in myself, for waiting all those years, for making this possible." "Thank your parents," Rashid said. "They're the ones who made you possible. I just helped you become who you were meant to be." 6 months later, Rashid passed away peacefully in his sleep. The entire kingdom mourned. Aram declared a week of remembrance, and Rashid was buried in the royal crypts beside Sultan Khalid, the sultan he had served in life, and the sultan's son he had served after death. At the funeral, Aram spoke of Rashid's loyalty, wisdom, and unwavering dedication to justice. "He showed me what it means to serve something larger than yourself, to sacrifice for principles rather than personal gain. The kingdom owes him a debt that can never be repaid, only honored through our continued commitment to the ideals he upheld." 3 months after Rashid's death, on a warm summer evening, Sultana Zainab gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl. The boy bore the royal mark of the crescent moon and star on his shoulder, confirming him as the heir. The girl was born without the mark, but was no less loved. They named the boy Khalid, after Aram's father. They named the girl Yasmin, after Aram's mother. And in that naming, they honored the past while looking toward the future. As Aram held his children for the first time, looking down at their tiny faces, he felt the full weight of responsibility settle on him anew. These children, and all the children of the kingdom were why he had fought so hard. They represented the future, a future free from tyranny, rich with possibility. "They're beautiful," Zainab said softly, exhausted but radiant. "They're hope," Aram replied, "living proof that the cycle of violence and oppression can be broken, that we can build something better." News of the royal twins spread quickly, and the kingdom celebrated. It wasn't just about succession, though the mark on young Khalid's shoulder ensured the throne's future. It was about continuity, about the promise that the progress they'd made would continue into the next generation. In the years that followed, Aram's reign became known as the Second Golden Age. Not because there were no problems, there were always problems, but because they were addressed with justice, wisdom, and compassion. The kingdom prospered not through conquest or exploitation, but through fair governance and mutual support. The Bedouin alliance flourished, with Sheikh Tariq's tribes becoming integral to the kingdom's defense and trade. The relationship between city dwellers and desert nomads became a model for how diverse peoples could coexist while maintaining their distinct identities. The broken sword, Moon's Edge, was indeed reforged by a master smith who came from the distant mountain kingdoms specifically for that purpose. The reforging ceremony was a symbolic moment. The blade that had been shattered by Zufard's coup was made whole again, just as the kingdom itself was being made whole. Aram carried both swords, Moon's Edge and Morning Star, one representing the past reclaimed, the other representing the future secured. Together, they symbolized his reign, honoring tradition while embracing progress. Zufard lived another 10 years in his imprisonment. Aram visited him occasionally, not out of friendship but out of a strange sense of duty. These visits were uncomfortable, tense, but also oddly necessary. "Why do you come here?" Zufard asked during one visit. "To gloat? To remind me of what I've lost?" "Neither," Aram replied. "I come to remind myself of what I must never become. You're my cautionary tale, Zufard. Every time I'm tempted to take the easy path, to use my power harshly, to ignore suffering for political expedience, I think of you. I think of how a man can start believing his own justifications and end up a tyrant. So I'm your moral lesson," Zufard said bitterly. "In a way, yes. But also, I come to see if you've gained any wisdom from all this reflection. Have you?" Zufard was quiet for a long time. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, "I was wrong. About everything. About what makes a kingdom strong. About what makes a ruler great. Your father understood things I never did. And you understand them too. I spent 25 years building a kingdom of fear, and you've spent 10 years building a kingdom of hope. Guess which one is actually stronger?" It was the closest Zufard ever came to an apology, and Aram accepted it as such. When Zufard finally died, Aram allowed him to be buried with dignity, not in the royal crypts, but not in a criminal's grave either. A simple tomb with a simple marker. Zufard al-Nazir. He ruled poorly, but in the end he saw his errors. May we all learn from his mistakes. Years passed. Khalid and Yasmin grew into remarkable young people. Khalid serious and thoughtful like his grandfather. Yasmin fierce and clever like her mother. They were joined by 2 more siblings, and the palace that had once echoed with silence and fear now rang with children's laughter. Aram and Zainab ruled together, true partners in every sense. They didn't always agree. Zainab was more inclined toward bold action while Aram preferred careful deliberation, but they balanced each other perfectly. Ginny became something of an uncle to the royal children, teaching them, to Zainab's exasperation, various skills that were perhaps not entirely appropriate for young princes and princesses. lockpicking, sleight of hand, how to move silently through corridors. They should understand how the other half lives, Ginny would say with a grin. Besides, these skills might save their lives someday. Layla's medical system became the envy of neighboring kingdoms, who sent students to study her methods. She never married, claiming she was wedded to her work, but she was beloved throughout the realm as the healing hand of the Sultan. Khalid the Elder eventually retired from active military command, but remained a valued advisor until his death at the age of 78. His last words, reportedly, were, "I finally got to serve a sultan worthy of the throne. That's enough for any soldier." Samir completed not one epic but 3. The first about Aram's quest to reclaim the throne, the second about the rebuilding of the kingdom, and the third about the everyday heroism of ordinary people living under just rule. All 3 were performed throughout the land and became part of the cultural heritage. Lord Hassan lived to see his grandchildren grow up in a kingdom free from fear. On his deathbed, he told Aram, "I pledged my sword to you when you had nothing but a stolen horse and a birthmark. I regret nothing. You've been everything I hoped for and more." The golden horse remained with Aram throughout his reign, a constant companion and reminder of where he'd come from. It never aged, never weakened, truly a magical creature bound to the throne itself. Young Khalid began learning to ride it when he turned 10, and the horse accepted him as readily as it had accepted his father. As Aram grew older, not old but no longer young, he would sometimes stand on the palace balcony at night, looking out over the city of light, and reflect on the incredible journey his life had been, from thief to prince to sultan, from powerless to powerful, from alone to surrounded by family and friends. The prophecy had come true in ways he never could have imagined that night he stole the golden horse. The trials were long past, the trial of the heart when he found love with Zainab, the trial of the sword when he proved his courage and leadership, the trial of the crown when he chose justice over revenge. But in a way, the trials never really ended. Every day brought new tests, new choices, new challenges. On the 20th anniversary of his coronation, at the age of 45, Aram held another gathering of his original companions. Some were gone now, Rashid, Khalid, Lord Hassan, but others remained. Ginny, grayer but no less sharp, Layla, honored and respected, Samir, still composing, Zainab, still fierce and loving. 20 years, Aram said, looking around at these people who had stood with him from the beginning. 20 years of trying to build something good. Have we succeeded? Look around you, Zainab said, gesturing to the windows. Outside, the city thrived, markets bustling, children playing safely, people living without fear. That's your answer. It's not perfect, Ginny added. There are still problems, still injustices, still people who suffer. But it's so much better than it was, and that's all we can ever really do. Make things better than we found them. The work continues, Layla said. Every generation has to choose whether to maintain justice or slide back into tyranny. Your children will face their own challenges, but you've given them a strong foundation. And a good example, Samir added. The story of your reign will be told for generations. Not because it was perfect, but because it was just. Because you tried every day to be better than you were. That's what people will remember. As the celebration continued, Aram slipped away for a moment to the royal crypts. He stood before the tombs of his parents, Sultan Khalid and Sultana Yasmin, whom he had never truly known, but whose legacy had shaped his entire life. I hope I've made you proud, he said softly. I hope the kingdom you died protecting is the kingdom I've built. I hope your sacrifice wasn't in vain. He could have sworn he felt warmth in the air, a presence, a sense of approval. Maybe it was imagination, maybe it was something more. But Aram chose to believe his parents were at peace, satisfied that their son had honored their memory and fulfilled their dreams. He placed a hand on each tomb, then turned and walked back up to the light, to the palace, to the life he'd built and the people who filled it with meaning.